Don't even try to deny it. I know you're also missing the Egghead arc like crazy. 6 months without episodes is a nightmare I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. So, thinking about you, I decided to bring you the best Egghead episodes of the year, straight to the point so you can catch up on everything that's happened so far in this amazing arc. Grab your popcorn, and without further ado, let's jump into the video.
I'll give it a go. I'm just letting you know, if you have heart problems, don't watch this video, because this is simply the best episode of One Piece of the year. Episode 1100 starts with Akainu slamming his fist on the table and asking what the Straw Hats are doing in Egghead. This bearded guy says that according to the report, they're on Vegapunk's side. Akainu sees that things are starting to get complicated. The Marines say that CP0 tried to enter the island, but Shaka and Pythagoras didn't let them. So Akainu realizes that Vegapunk already knew about CP0's objective to bring his head home, and that's why CP0 had to resort to violence. Akainu says that this is almost a declaration of war against the Yonko's crew, and he wished the Cypher Pole kids had asked before acting. The Blondie says they've lost communication with CP0, so they don't know anything else. Akainu says that if the Straw Hats are on Vegapunk's side, they'll lose many soldiers in this mess. That's right, nobody should have messed with the old man, but the Navy will also play their secret cards, and Akainu sends Kizaru to sort out this mess. Luckily for him, Kizaru was already heading to Egghead Island to complete another mission, so Akainu tells them to have Lucci wait until the Navy arrives with reinforcements. No matter what happens, he can't lay a finger on Luffy. Over at Egghead Island, everyone was evacuating because that place was about to become a war zone. Jinbe tells Chopper to take care of Bonnie because he'll carry Atlas to Frankie. The girl is all beat up. Someone has to take care of that, right? Jinbe tells Luffy to come along with them, but when they checked, it was too late. The kid had already disappeared from sight and was ready to take on Rob Lucci, who was flaunting his entire physique just to make Luffy jealous, who's been skinny since the first episode. Luffy tells them to go ahead and take care of Atlas, because now he has matters to attend to. Jinbe says this is not good at all. Mugiwara says, look what you did to her, but Rob Lucci said he didn't give a damn about that. Do you really think this guy is going to wait for the Navy to arrive with reinforcements? He's already eager to transform into the tiger. Kaku and Stussy tell Lucci to stop, because he's causing trouble, but this guy is too rebellious and doesn't care. Luffy says he'll leave the rest to Jinbe and Chopper, then he takes such a strong leap that the ground even breaks. He launches with a monstrous punch at Rob Lucci, who defends and joins the Yonko's fight. Everyone's already looking like it's over now. The pigeon guy throws some karate moves at Luffy, but he dodges everything and lands a double kick right in the enemy's face. They both activate their armament haki and begin an insane exchange of punches. Lucci is still going strong with his iron fingers. Luffy tries to hit him right in the face, but he dodges and gives a slap that sends Luffy flying, but he falls into a familiar pose for Rob Lucci, the same one he made in Eni's lobby when he used second gear to beat down the agent. Rob Lucci asks what's that on his wanted poster, so Luffy asks if he's curious, and who isn't, right? So instead of explaining, he's going to show it in practice. Luffy starts doing some yoga there to control his breathing and focus. Then the drums of liberation begin to play. The devil fruit of Luffy appears and he transforms into the god Nika, the same one who beat up Kaido. He's back! A crazy hip-hop started playing, and Luffy begins pounding his chest to call forth the challenge. Nobody was understanding a thing. Then he channels Jack Frost and his hair turns white, until he starts releasing a destructively powerful aura that begins destroying the entire terrain just by his mere existence. A normal opponent would have been defeated just by that alone, but don't forget he's fighting a psychopath. Rob Lucci smiles because now things are going to heat up. Luffy starts transforming while changing shape, and this surprises even Jinbe and Chopper, who had never seen the captain's new form up close. The terrain is all shaking, and Rob Lucci says this is going to be fun, but he blinks for 1 millisecond and look the demon who appears in front of him. Man, he took a hit that sent him flying so far that he even knocked down a building the size of Kaido. After this small demonstration of power, Luffy starts staggering as if he had just drunk 10 liters of Kachaka. Over at the cameras, the Straw Hats were seeing everything, and they ask what the hell was that? Usopp says Luffy turned into a whitey. Look who's talking, right? Nami says this is the Luffy who kicked Kaido's butt, and Shaka is incredulous with the White Warrior. Even Vegapunk over there felt the guy's power. Luffy starts calling the guy Pigeon to fight, and asks if he went down with just a flick like that. But if on one side we have a monster, on the other we have a cold and calculating guy who certainly poops in the school bathroom with the door open. Rob Lucci says Luffy is as bold as ever, and that gets on his nerve. And you thought only Luffy had a surprise new form? You know nothing, innocent. Rob Lucci turns into a Super Saiyan Jaguar that even the devil trembles if he passes by. And look at this guy's face, with a sinister bloodthirsty thirst seeming like he snorted 3 kilos of passion fruit tang. The Straw Hats are scared shitless and wonder if he's always been like this. Kaku was desperate telling Rob Lucci to stop because they still don't have permission to act, but this guy is so altered that not even if his mom threatened to beat him with a 3-centimeter thick Hawaiian flip-flop would he stop. Then he starts circling Luffy at the speed of light. Shaka says this is very rare because almost always when a Zoan awakens it steals the user's personality. Luffy was already getting dizzy from how much the tiger was spinning, but observation haki is on point and he manages to dodge the attack effortlessly. But if it catches him off guard, it's over. The kid is still cheeky and tells Lucci to come get him, wasting energy there, but he forgets that when his strength runs out he looks like a dried up mummy that can't move a muscle. Jinbe and Chopper, who are not fools, were already getting out of there, telling him to think twice before starting starting a war, but it was they who started it. Nobody told them to do that to Atlas. They start swinging from building to building in Spider-Man style. The pursuit is insane. Vegapunk appears in the laboratory asking Shaka if the White Warrior appeared. Frankie goes crazy to meet the real Vegapunk, and Usopp says he was down there not even 2 minutes ago. The old man asks what happened to Luffy, and Nami doesn't know anything, but says that's the power of gum. She's well informed. She says he has the Goma Goma no Mi fruit, but Vegapunk says there's no such devil fruit in the old encyclopedia of devil fruits. And of course, everyone gets scared. Vegapunk is fascinated and says he looks too beautiful in this form. This old man wants to buy an iPhone for Luffy. He says he can't wait to meet him, and Sanji says if he knows something, spill the beans. The scientist says that this form of his resembles an entity from ancient books. In other words, it looks like a god, but Sanji says it can't be. Luffy is just an idiot, but that's it. A liberation warrior who plays the fool and makes people smile, also known as Nika, the sun god. My buddy, I even got goosebumps here. Nami says she's never heard of that name, but it's normal since it was erased from history. But as long as there are people who believe in Nika, his existence would never cease to exist. The old man says all things are brought into the world because they are desired, and devil fruits are a perfect example of that, since they are manifestations of people's desires for human evolution. So all powers represent the different futures of humanity, and because they are against Mother Nature, they are hated by the sea, and that's why they can't swim. He says advanced users are those who live in realities different from what anyone ever dreamed of, and the brawl was raging. In Vegapunk's theory, you don't even need to think if there is a god or not, and he asks if this world isn't too crazy. In the city being destroyed by the two little devils, Sentomaru appears asking if they knew where they were, and says that wasn't a playground for the government and pirates. His Den Mushy rings, but he says he's off duty, but it was Vegapunk's voice, so he asks what to do, says that the Cypher Pole are his allies and the pirates are enemies, and asks if he should fight alongside CP0, but the old man says no way, since he is the main target of CP0. Sentomaru asks what mess he made for this to happen, but no time to explain, and he asks the kid to keep CP0 away, but Sentomaru says that will make him a traitor, and this is the first time that Seraphim and real Jinbei meet face to face. Vegapunk says he was right and needed to ask Sentomaru's opinion before, and he starts putting psychological pressure, saying he owes the old man a favor for saving him from poverty in the past, and he didn't want to, but the blockhead's blackmail worked, and Sentomaru joined the traitors team. Kaku and Stussy were shocked since the chubby guy has 3 Seraphins, so this is going to be very difficult. Kaku tells S-Bear to finish off the Seraphins, but it doesn't do anything. My son, Sentomaru has control over all the Seraphins and tells him to stop. Stussy says it's no use because they have a worse hand, but Sentomaru doesn't care and yells Truco in the ear of CP0, telling S-Bear to wipe out the agents. So the big bear started charging a laser that made everyone run away, but it didn't help. The agents were blown away by the explosion. Only Kaku and Stussy managed to escape, but it didn't help much, as Sentomaru's authority chip was greater than that of the Cypher Pole agents, so he can control the Seraphs at will. Only the Gorasius and the Vegapunks can have a greater authority chip than Sentomaru to control the little robot, but since there are no Gorasius there's nothing they can do. Kaku has the brilliant idea of asking the 5 elders to order the Seraphins to stop, but not just to do it with a phone on speakerphone and a lot of willpower. They had to be face to face with the Seraphim. Kaku says it will be a huge and expensive loss for the government if they destroy the Seraphs, and curses Rob Lucci for not thinking about the consequences before acting. All this time Lucci was running after Luffy Gear 5 like a maniac, but couldn't lay a finger on the kid, who was bouncing around and taunting nonstop. Luffy starts preparing an attack and Rob Lucci was sure he could easily dodge with all that speed, but he was taken by surprise with a blow from Luffy on the ground that made everything move and gave a punch to the Jaguar's stomach. After that, he was left breathless. Sentomaru says he will help the Straw Hat, then tells S-Snake to guide Luffy to Vegapunk's rocket. Meanwhile, he tells S-Hawk and S-Shark to hold CP0. Jinbei says he can't believe what he's seeing, because all the brown-skinned Seraphins are copies of the 7 pirates who held the Shikibukai position. The Seraphs go after the agents and they realize they're completely screwed. The extras fill S-Bear with bullets, but the guy was bulletproof. What did they think those little toys could do? Luffy dodges a blow from Rob Lucci and wraps himself around a tree and takes momentum to punch the kitty's face, but he dodges again shamelessly and the kid hits the tree. But in this form, he can literally do whatever he wants, so he uses the trees like a human slingshot and headbutts Lucci's stomach, who goes flying kilometers and makes the most satisfying painful face I've ever seen in my life. And of course, Luffy cracks up with that. Then he meets Sentomaru and starts making fun of his axe, saying it's been a long time since they last saw each other, but Sentomaru tells him not to mess with him because they are enemies. He asks if Luffy will help get Uncle Punk off the island, and he all smiley says of course. Sentomaru says he doesn't know if he can trust him and doesn't believe he became a Yonkou, and says that Luffy's new style is totally weird, but while they were chit-chatting the beast came out of hiding. Rob Lucci appears like lightning and pierces Sentomaru's heart with just one finger. This guy has taken head kicks, headbutts, but doesn't fall at all. He says he just had to eliminate the commander, because now the Seraphs can obey the Cypher Pole again. Episode 1101 of One Piece starts with the alarm ringing throughout the entire city, with a black and white tone on the screen that showed the tragic atmosphere on that island. Sentomaru had just been stabbed in the back by Rob Lucci and was lying on the ground snoring. Luffy runs over to him, apologizing for distracting him, but the chubby guy asks Luffy not to underestimate him because it's obvious that he noticed. He just couldn't block in time. And look at the psychopath face of the little tiger, my friend. He looked like that after people started saying it was a scam. Rob Lucci says he's very stubborn and orders him to pass out. So Luffy starts preparing to give a massive leap towards Lucci, who dodges his punch and still delivers a huge blow to the Jack Frost boy's stomach. He's thrown to infinity and beyond just like Team Rocket. He wants to send Sentomaru flying because only then will the Seraphs be able to obey the CP0 agents, since Sentomaru's rank of authority is higher. S-Bear and S-Hawk were in a crazy pursuit behind Kaku and Stussy. The little tiger takes such a strong leap that the ground even breaks. He jumps onto Sentomaru, crazy to eat a roast beef, but Luffy tells him to go back to attacking Chico Bento's oxen because nobody's going to eat the chubby one, and he delivers a Gomu Gomu Bikudeo that sends the crazy flying away and breaking all the buildings he hits. But Luffy spun so much that he lost control and almost signed up for a Beyblade battle. Jinbei tells Luffy to stop fooling around because they have to go straight to Vegapunk where they won't be able to save the girl, but he says he spun too much and can't stop anymore. From now on, he identifies as Hurricane Katrina, and out of nowhere, he turned into Zoro, getting lost on a straight road. Luffy spun so much that he ended up burying himself underground and turning into a marmot. S-Hawk was slicing through all the government agents in such an absurd way that I'm afraid of what it would be like if the real Mihawk were here. Meanwhile, S-Shark was making the ground move like an amoeba, creating a waterless tsunami. Kaku says the Seraphs won't stop so easily, and if they keep killing each other, they'll end up losing. Stussy says they're just kids, but they're scary. She may look like a young girl, but don't forget that the real Stussy is between 90 and 857 years old. On the cameras, Vegapunk is sad that Sentomaru had to play the role of Ace, turning into a donut, but considering that Sentomaru is a bit chubbier than Ace, he could use a few more holes to look like a waffle. Frankie starts crying, asking Vegapunk if that damn Jinbei kid's ability is the power of the Sway Sway No Mi, the fruit of his most loyal Don Quixote family comrade, the great Senior Pink. He says there aren't two identical devil fruits, and asks if his besto friendo was dragged into it. The old man says he's now a prisoner of Impel Down, and Frankie is overjoyed to know that his brother is okay, and asks how he managed to create a devil fruit just like the pacifier man. But Vegapunk says he can artificially create any Zoan-type fruits, that is, excluding the smiles created by Caesar. Nami says she wouldn't mind if that damn Caesar died. Smiles are very risky because only 1 in every 10 people gets the power of the fruit, and those who don't end up looking like Luffy's Gear 5, laughing at everything. The old man says that with a lot of time and money, they might be able to create even special devil fruits, but there's no guarantee they'll awaken just like the original. He tried his best to recreate Logia Type 1, but those are tough even for the old man. But if they find out the lineage factor of a Paramecia, they can create the same special abilities by giving some sinister blood type, and it's this blood that runs through the Seraph's arms. This is the green blood. For mere mortals, it's known as green blood, and Frankie goes crazy when he finds out that it was Vegapunk himself who created this blood. So yes, the Seraphs could gain devil fruit powers, and S-Snake used the power of her own original form, petrifying all the government suckers with the power of Boa Hancock, which is very suspicious since for this power to work, they have to fall in love with her beauty, and she's just a child. But since we don't want to see Oda getting arrested before finding out what One Piece is, we overlook it. The old man says the Seraphs represent the greatest invention in the entire history of science, the greatest invention he could create in all the history of the seas of One Piece. S-Bear would shrink his paw attack to grow and explode all the agents at once, and because of this absurd strength, they are called the most powerful form of humanity. Nami asks if that's why the Shichibukais lost their position, and Usopp goes nuts with these things the old man created. They realize that originally the Seraphs would be a marine weapon, meaning they would be a threat to them, but since the Marines are after the guy who created them, forget about it, my son. The people in the city saw Luffy's hole in the wall, there he is, and ran to Sentomaru, but the chubby guy tells them to back off because the devil hadn't suffered a single scratch yet. Then he starts coming out of the hole with a creepy aura that even the devil trembles in front of this guy. The bogeyman tells Rob Lucci's story to his son to make him sleep. The researchers yelled at Sentomaru to flee, but the fluffy K couldn't even get up. Imagine running away from a monster like that, faster than Usain Bolt's son who is related to Flash. The kitten asks where Sentomaru's rubber buddy went, but he says he doesn't know and doesn't want to know because that guy isn't his friend. But Lucci tells him to shut up because now he's a traitor. Then the effect of the 3 kilos of passion fruit tang he sniffed started to hit him hard, and he goes after Sentomaru again with a sinister bloodlust. This guy doesn't get tired, but you know who else doesn't get tired? This guy right here. Look at the abomination Luffy turns into, like a giant marmot trying to feed on Rob Lucci, who was very fast and was dodging Luffy easily. But the ease didn't last long because Luffy was so hungry that he started eating dirt, my buddy, and was spitting out some nasty pebbles at Rob Lucci. He was dodging everything, but when he stopped to bat away a single rock, Jack Frost was already appearing behind him with a cunning look. But this trickster has a brilliant idea and decides to put his brain to work, so he turns a pipe into rubber to use as a slingshot, puts on the glasses he stole from Usopp and starts spinning the dangerous little arm that the Oni doesn't even want to think about what it's capable of. Shows some flashbacks comparing today's Lucci with the one who got beaten up in Eni's lobby. And guess what? This time it won't be much different. He throws a rocket into Lucci's stomach to give back what he had taken just now. The dude was so strong that the man's belly ended up behind his back. Rob Lucci couldn't even believe what he was seeing. What ridiculous power was this? This is the 4th time he's taken a beating and been thrown away, breaking everything in his path, and he finally passes out. S-Snake was guiding Jinbei and Chopper to Vegapunk's vacuum rocket. Using all her charm, she says the two are too slow and tells them to get inside the rocket. Jinbei thanks her and says that unlike the original, this Hancock is very nice, but she blushes all over, calls him an idiot and says she's just following orders. The rocket was about to take off in less than a minute and Chopper shouts for Luffy to come quickly, and he had to decide whether to go there or help the fallen Sentomaru like a pancake. But the axe guy clears his doubts and tells Luffy to protect Uncle Punk at all costs, and he says he'll protect the old man with his own life, so he gets a boost to get to the rocket faster, but Sentomaru says he's going the wrong way. You think so, my buddy? The kid's into slingshot today, so with 5 seconds left for the rocket to take off, he flies at full speed and manages to get in at the last second. Chopper was thrilled to be flying on a rocket for the first time, so they take off at the speed of light and Chopper even bites his tongue because it's so fast. Bonnie, who managed to sleep for 3 episodes, wakes up asking where the heck they were, and she gets a shock asking who that old man next to her was. Jinbei says it's a long story. Luffy looked like a pharaoh who just came out of the tomb. The rocket was so fast that in 32 seconds they went from the battlefield to Vegapunk's laboratory above the cloud. As soon as they arrive, the system is shut down so that no CP0 agent could use the rocket to go up too. There's no way. Oda genius. The speaker tells all the researchers to hide inside the factories because the invaders were the danger in person, and all the doors start closing. Back on the island, Sentomaru was in a bad state. Rob Lucci walks up to him with a disappointed look at the boy's betrayal. After taking so many beatings, he loses consciousness and falls to the ground like crap. Damn, Kaku even comes over and steps on the poor kid. These guys aren't messing around. The 1102nd episode of One Piece starts with Kuma flying among the clouds like an airplane. Kaku was stepping on Sentomaru mercilessly, telling him to be proud of fulfilling his role as a bodyguard, but now he'll have to pay for it. Rob Lucci says that Vegapunk is causing too many problems, so it's better to finish him off once and for all. Stussy tells Rob Lucci to stop being impatient, but he doesn't care. If they keep stalling, Vegapunk will manage to escape. Back at the laboratory, the old man says that as everyone can see, he is the government's main target. It's tough being a genius because everyone is always trying to pick your brain to see if you'll become the next Albert Einstein. Nami asks if they really want to go after the old man, since he's the smartest man in the world, so for them, that would be like shooting themselves in the foot. And he says that the big shots in the government must think so, since he created inventions that greatly benefited the Navy. He innovated Kairosaki navigation technology, turned animals into cyborgs, and most importantly, he created the Seraphs who can use devil fruit powers. The old man is like Swiss Army knife, 1001 utility, but none of that really matters, because he asks what they would do if this misunderstood genius rebelled against them and became their enemy. Nami says he's right. In that case, she would tear the old man's head off without mercy. She'd give him a good beating. Usopp already trembled in fear after the woman's intimidating power. Vegapunk says he has no intention of rebelling, but the government idiots swear he will. He says his situation is too bad, and Usopp tells him not to pretend it's not his fault, but the old man says that even with all this happening, right at the moment a Yonka's crew appears, so this must be fate. Usopp gets angry asking if he's going on a boat ride with them. Frankie then, oh my buddy, he was thrilled to say he's got plenty of surprises to show them, but Nami didn't quite like the idea. She said if he boards the Sunny, they'll also become targets of CP0, and of course, Mr. Smooth Sanji already agreed with the lady. Oh, owner of all the wisdom in the world, step on my face. Robin says it's really risky, but Vegapunk took the Sunny as a hostage, so they'll have to do what he says. What an excuse. She loves adrenaline. Do you really think with that monster protecting the Sunny, anyone can lay a finger on the ship? Nami goes, yeah, right? What a mess. And Sanji, don't worry, my dear, relax, daddy's got you. Vegapunk says he's counting on them, and the Supreme Dude tells him to at least release them from those damn boots of hell. They've been stuck in them for over 5 episodes. The researchers rush to rescue Atlas, who was in bad shape after Rob Lucci blew up her jar, and they already called the mechanics to fix her before she goes kaput. Bonnie starts threatening the poor guys to tell her where Vegapunk was, but Jinbe goes, hold on there, partner, you think you're at your own home? Luffy was impressed with all the technology in the laboratory, and Bonnie was almost the same, but totally the opposite, and she started wrecking the laboratory. Vandals are complicated. She wanted to cosplay as Sabo and grab that iron stick to play golf with the old man's head. Chopper asks where the girl is going, but she says that if Vegapunk sent bugs after her when she asked him to bring her father back, he might as well go eat and drink. Kaku says they finally got control of the Seraphs after turning Sentomaru into roasted pork. Rob Lucci even wiped out one of Vegapunk's satellites, so there were only 6 left, including the old man, but the problem was how they were going to get into the laboratory since the barrier was practically impenetrable. Rob Lucci says it's all good good, because he won't let a single ant leave this island alive. So he orders the agents to destroy all the ships and block all the exits, because they can't escape in any way. At the red port at the foot of the red line, Kuma kept flying at full speed. Until a little while ago, I had no idea this guy could fly. But knowing how to fly is easy. He just doesn't know how to land. And he parked his head in the middle of a giant mountain that read world government. I'm telling you, he was so jealous of God Usopp. I mean, Sogeking setting fire to the government flag in Eni's lobby that he decided to destroy the entire government island. After that wonderful landing, he starts falling from up there like a meteorite, making a crater in the ground and scaring all the residents. There were rumors spreading that he had escaped from the land of the gods a few days ago, the invincible slave of the celestial dragons taking a stroll on government island. Why not, right? And since everyone was calling him a monster, the guy is too humble and decides to fulfill the people's wishes. So just by blinking his eyes, everyone started running away in fear. But the dad of the year wasn't doing well at all, and he was as tired as if he had just finished a 3-week marathon. A snitch in the newspaper told people to hide because Daddy Kuma arrived, and was shouting to call the Navy because this guy was dangerous, since he had no human conscience, so no one knows what goes on in his head. The government nutjobs had already blocked all the exits on the island. Now they just had to send Vegapunk to the cleaners. The problem was how they were going to get the old man out of there, since that barrier was practically impenetrable. Stussy asked if Rob Lucci is really going to ignore the Navy's order not to attack the Straw Hat crew, but he doesn't give a damn, says he won't accept Luffy as a Yonko no matter what. And Stussy is speechless to describe so much foolishness. Back at the laboratory, Shaka realizes they're blocking every corner so no one can leave the island, not even through a sewer. He wanted to sneak off the island, but Vegaforce can only fly within the island. Lilith already has some cannons ready to avenge Atlas and blow up CP0's head, but Pythagoras ruins her fun and says it's going to be pretty hard for the agents to get up there with that barrier, and since they're not stupid, they shouldn't even go near those nutjobs. But Lilith didn't like the idea and asks if they want to just wait in the laboratory until CP0 waves at the window. Vegapunk says their only objective is to escape the island, but with that tiger all high, I don't know if he'll just let everyone go for free like that. And of course, Lilith agrees. Right, they're going to have to beat the world government to a pulp to get out of this, but Shaka says they can't do that, and Lilith asks what's wrong with attacking those nutjobs who want to wipe them out, but their only goal is to get the old man off the island safely, and Lilith says they won't be able to do that without smashing those clowns' faces in, and the old man was just like, hold on there, kiddo. So Shaka says since they're just satellite, it's no problem if they have to sacrifice themselves to save the old man, but Lilith hates his fancy pants attitude. Sanji was just taking a puff of that chocolate cigarette of his and asks why Luffy doesn't hurry up, and Usopp asks what they're going to do now, because those nutjobs are just trying to pick a fight with the world government, nothing they haven't done before. Right, Robin says that even if they don't want to fight, it all depends on the Vegapunk's decision, but Nami doesn't even want to imagine being chased by that tiger again, especially in this new psycho version of his. Everyone was trying to decide what to do, and Pythagoras began to come up with a bunch of ideas for new invention, but now is not the time for that, my friend. The old man was feeling sad because Sentomaru had turned into a donut. That's what he gets for being so loyal. While everyone was in despair, Pythagoras said they still had a chance to escape because they still have an ally out there, but Edison said that if she helped the Vegapunks, she'll also be hunted by the government until the last day of her life. And do you think the old man cares about that? He already grabbed the Didenmashi and asked for help because they're in big trouble, and the person on the other end said they were just waiting for the old man to give the orders, so they began to celebrate that they had gotten help and prepared to go to the Straw Hat ship. Lilith said she would take them flying out of the island like Vegaforce. Shaka told her to hurry up, and the girl turned into a beast. Vegapunk told the Straw Hat that they're ready to go to the Sunny. All 7 Vegapunks. Usopp was thrilled. Frankie almost had a heart attack with the 7 greatest scientists in the world on the ship he built. Nami didn't like the idea before. Now she'll have to take all 7 Vegapunk. It's only going to be more trouble. But this time, she was alone in this, because Sanji got all excited that Lilith was coming along and said they were more than welcome. Out of nowhere, a demon showed up shouting that he would finish Vegapunk off. Bonnie asked how he was able to use those bugs to escape, but it was actually her who attracted the bugs with that shoppy lightsaber. Luffy told Bonnie not to kill the old man because he promised Sweet Cake he would get him off the island safely, but security was about to end because out of nowhere, the laboratory's defense system was deactivated. And how could that be possible if only the Vegapunks had access to the control room? Kaku was already saying that today was their lucky day, but Rob Lucci told him to wait because it could be a trap, but they couldn't let such a golden opportunity slip away. So Pinocchio flew off and said, "Follow me, everyone." And after seeing that it wasn't a trap, Rob Lucci said that luck had really abandoned Vegapunk. Stussy managed to see the Straw Hat ship parked up there in the cloud. They said that's why they hadn't seen the ship down there, and Kaku was surprised that there was even a robot. So the cowardly bunch decided to destroy the Sunny because then they wouldn't have a way to escape. Out at sea, there was a whole battalion of Navy warships arriving with reinforcements at Egghead, led by none other than Kizaru, who was surprised that the Straw Hats had joined forces with Vegapunk, so it'll be a piece of cake for the old man to escape from the island. But the Admiral said he believed things wouldn't go exactly exactly as they imagined, since he's bringing a little surprise with him. So he ordered them to continue with the plan to send all the Navy ship to Egghead, because the kids have had their fun. Now it's time for the grown-up to play. Episode 1103 of One Piece starts with the CP0 trio spotting the Sunny parked in the clouds. Then they have the brilliant idea to destroy the Straw Hat ship that was just chilling there sunbathing. But if you pay attention, there's a dead body snoring on the deck. There's also a corpse washing the dishes. Wondering what that alarm was all about, Kaku starts busting out some crazy breakdance moves to destroy everything, and that's when he made the biggest mistake of his life and woke up the guy who solos everything and everyone. In just 3 seconds of consciousness, Zoro wakes up and slices Kaku's attack in half. Everyone goes into shock. Zoro was already pissed, asking who the hell woke me up from my beauty sleep. And look how cute the 3 clowns are doing double jumps in the air. And Pinocchio gets the biggest scare. He wasn't expecting to encounter the guy who beat him up in Eni's lobby in that ridiculous giraffe form. Zoro says he has no idea what they're doing here, but if they want to destroy the Sunny, they'll be cut in half like a hot knife through butter. Pythagoras manages to restore the barrier, but it was already too late because the agents had already managed to infiltrate, and that was really bad because now they were going to destroy the only way for them to escape the island. But through the cameras, they managed to see that the 2 who stayed on the ship were fighting to protect the Sunny, and they had to help or they'd never be able to escape the island. Then Lilith says, well, dang, looks like we gotta fight after all. Wasn't even planning on it. Luffy and the others were chasing after Bonnie and wondering what happened to set off that alarm. They finally reach where the rest of the Straw Hats were, and Luffy says they saw a bunch of crazy robots, but Usopp says they saw everything on the cameras. They even saw him taking a 5-minute break with Rob Lucci without losing their friendship. They tell them to hurry up and leave the island with Vegapunk, and Luffy asks, what do you mean they're leaving already? They just got here. And everyone even wanted to stay a bit longer, but they can't forget that this is a government island, right? And to Grinho, Igiota was already crazy trying to take the old man's head home. Then Luffy remembers he was going after Bonnie and asks if they've seen her. A crazy lady with pink hair and a lightsaber in hand. He says she's going to try to take Vegapunk down, and everyone starts panicking. And Robin asks where the old man went, and they start cursing the guy, taking a ride and still being late. Psycho Girl even goes, hope Bonnie hasn't already ripped the old man's neck off, and she might as well become a fortune teller because that's exactly what was about to happen. He was running like crazy from Bonnie, who wanted to rip the old man's soul out of his body. He tells her to stop because he doesn't have time for this, and asks her to listen to what he has to say, but she couldn't care less and screams, give my father's brain back, make him normal again, and doesn't even let the old man explain. He says he can't do that, but the girl doesn't want to hear it. You're on your own, buddy. He says there's a reason for this, and the girl swings a golf swing right away, right in the eyes. Vegapunk manages to dodge, but ends up flipping down the stairs and face planting on the floor. The old man's spine was screaming for help. Bonnie walks in Sukuna style. I wouldn't want to be in his place. Then it shows a flashback of Vegapunk with his 3-kilometer brain saying that his new invention had worked, and it was a big step for world peace. Out of nowhere, Bonnie turned into a child and started crying, saying she broke a bone. The old man panicked and ordered an ambulance, doctor, surgeon, and everything she's entitled to. But it was all a trap because she turns into a gorilla and punches hard to send the old man to hell. And lucky she's not a shooter because her aim sucks. Right, look at the old man's big head, and she managed to miss. He tried to escape, but the girl hit him from behind and the guy simply got pregnant. In the genius belly, you don't have to wait 9 months. The old man started dropping a bunch of little stars and turned into a helpless baby. Now he really can't escape. He says those shiny objects are his lost years and tells her to return his genius, but she says not to worry because her ability doesn't last forever. Then she asks why he killed her father, but the old man didn't want to talk about it at all because she would just get hurt. He promised Kuma he would never tell her the reason. At those times, Kuma was there in red port cosplaying as Spider-Man and giving his life to climb walls, but she didn't buy it. What do you mean you're not going to tell me why you killed my father? She asked if he thinks she's stupid and told him to stop fooling around, but he swears he's telling the truth. He says the decision to lose all memories was Kuma's own, but she calls him a liar and says her father would never choose to leave her behind. She kept calling him a murderer, but he says it was hard for him too. He doesn't even like to remember. The Marines were even throwing cannonballs to knock him down from above, but the guy is tough and doesn't fall. The old man said Kuma was a great man and he's very proud to have been his friend. He says he loves Kuma and can't say anything else, but all that talk went in one ear and out the other. She didn't want to hear it and asked who would believe that nonsense. She started hearing a noise and walked toward a door, but the mini Vegapunk begged her not to get close to it. He said this has nothing to do with Kuma, and she goes, "Are you lying to a liar?" There was literally Kuma's paw on the door. The lever was stuck, so she simply destroyed everything and opened it with brute force. Then she enters the forbidden room and there's a giant paw just like the one Kuma used to take all of Luffy's pain, except this one was golden, my friend, covered in gold. The girl's eyes start to shine. In a sea of the new world, Kid's troop was passing by some giant fish that were jumping and making some wild waves, so Killer tells Kid to wake up and asks if they're really going to land on this island. Kid goes, What? When did we become afraid of a little island? But this wasn't just any island, my friend. The guys arrived at Elbaf, the island of giants. And those who read the manga know the little surprise waiting for Kid on this island. Back at the Marine headquarters, Doll Girl was telling Garp to stop. They were about to head to Egghead and the Vice Admiral wanted to take all the troops to Hakinosu, the pirates' island. Doll asks if he got permission from the government to go head-to-head with a Yonko. But apparently, everyone's giving the government the cold shoulder. Rob Lucci already got into a fight with Luffy and now Garp wants to punch Blackbeard who kidnapped Boy Kobe. Helmeppo and Hibari were crying their eyes out because Kobe had been taken, so the old man comes and shouting his name and everyone thinks it's another pirate coming to capture Helmeppo. But they only capture important people, right? He was saying that Blackbeard kidnapped Kobe and he couldn't do anything, but Garp tells him to man up and stop crying, because now they're going to beat up 5,000 pirates at Hakinosu. The real fight between Zoro and Kaku was about to begin, but this time, Pinocchio came with a mysterious awakening that scared everyone, and that Vegapunk's infiltrated ally finally decided to show up, and showed us one of the biggest plot twists in One Piece history. In episode 1104 of One Piece, after Bonnie entered the Forbidden Room, Mini Vegapunk tells her to wait because that has nothing to do with Kuma. Quite possible, right? Then it shows a flashback of Vegapunk putting a Baccara formula on the board and teaching Kuma how to solve sine and cosine. He was telling Kuma that when humans go from crib, they lose a certain weight, and that's the weight of the soul. This means that the soul exists in real life, but the big guy wasn't understanding anything. Then the old man asks if he doesn't think that this is related to his power, which is to make people's pain appear that should be invisible, and still being able to pass it on to other people. So Vegapunk had the brilliant idea of doing the same thing with the memories of the kid. He wanted to know everything about his past. Then Mini Vegapunk yelled at Bonnie not to touch that paw, because that was the pain and she could go throw it on Vasco for that. But the old man couldn't fool her. The girl says she knows her old man's ability very well. In the flashback, Kuma asked if the old man wanted to see him embarrassed, but Vegapunk pleads and says it's all for the good of science. He swears he'll never show it to anyone, but Kuma tells him to forget it because it won't happen. Back at the Labo Estredo, Zoro was taking a sinister X1 with Kaku, and I wouldn't want to take a hit from these guys because just the hockey from the swordsmanship was already cutting everything. Rob, Lucci and Stussy were just sitting back watching everything, and apparently Oda put everyone to awaken in Egghead, because now it's Pinocchio's turn, who says he knows Zoro is strong so he's going all out this time. Stussy asks how they're going to kidnap Vegapunk, and Rob Lucci tells her to spill the beans if she has any plans, since she knows this place like the back of her hand. Back in the laboratory, Nami was desperate that Rob Lucci was going up. Shaka says they had some small problems with the system. Lilith was already eager to inaugurate her Vega Bazooka, but Shaka tells her to calm down. Robin says CP0 is very unpredictable, so not even Vegapunk could predict they were going to invade. The Seraphims were falling from the sky and landing on the clouds like a meteor. Stussy asks if they followed the troop, and wow, what a big bunch. Usopp says thank goodness Zoro and Brook are down there to protect the Sunny. It was 2 against 3, so everything would depend on how they would fight. But Shaka says, buddy, look closely. They had forgotten that besides the devilish CP0, there were also the Seraphims who sided with the government after Sentomara turned into a donut. So, besides being at a disadvantage of 2 against 7, the Seraphims were even stronger than the agent. Rob Lucci says he didn't send anyone to follow them, but Stussy says it's too late now. There's no way back for the kids because the barrier has been activated again. Usopp starts to go crazy because now the guys have a whole army, but Shaka says that this may have been CP0's mistake, since up there, those who control the Seraphims are the Vegapunks, as CP0 is only 4th in the authority ranking. If a single Vegapunk gets down there, they'll take control of the Seraphims again. Nami already makes a face of wow, clever boy, and there's no way, Oda's too much of a genius. Mini Vegapunk begged Bonnie to stay away from that golden paw. At Redport, the Marines began shooting at Kuma to take him down before he could reach Mariehua, and the bullets didn't even tickle the guy, but they started to resort to shooting cannonball. Then he fell from above like pigeon poop and opened another crater in the ground. The Marines tell the residents to get out of there soon because things are going to get ugly, and Kuma gets up with a sinister purple blinker in his eye. Every episode, this guy's RGB LED changes color. Bonnie said that wasn't pain because she knows her dad's power very well. The Marines prepared to finish off Kuma, but he sends a laser into their mouths that explodes and makes everyone fly. Bonnie asks if those were Kuma's memories and she was already eager to see everything. Kuma gets up again and starts climbing the wall again, but he was already dust and already giving a blue screen. After Shaka says they have control of the Seraphims up there, Edison remembers they only regain command if the order reaches them directly, so he starts flying at 300 miles per hour to reach them as quickly as possible. Lilith, who doesn't mind a fight, was already coming down with the bazooka just to make sure. Shaka says, I'm counting on you, Edson, Lilith, and the girl tells him to stop acting like the captain. Usopp says it's bad because not even Zoro and Brook can handle all these guys, so Frankie goes down to help and Usopp says he can protect the guys up there. Sanji says Zoro's thick-headedness will be an important sacrifice for them to reach One Piece, and Nami tells him to get some shame and go help the crew. So Sanji turned into a Seraphim and started following Nami's orders, while complaining that he didn't want to go save Zoro. Frankie tells him to stop slacking off and Brook says Zoro will owe him one. Down below, Kaku was turning into a real devil and saying he was itching to settle the score with Zoro. And I swear I was expecting another crazy awakening like Rob Lucci's, but the guy ended up looking more like a giraffe with a long neck. Brooke asked what form that was. Zoro says it was supposed to be a giraffe, but it's a bit different from last time. But that doesn't matter because when he cuts the giraffe's corpse in half it'll be the same thing. Kaku says that's if you can cut me, Roronoa, and man, his giant nose blade is untouchable. So Zoro tells Brooke to take care of the ship and the guy pulls a nasal pistol and focuses all his haki on his nose. The guy ate the hay fever no me, man, and he kept shouting impressed. Ha, there's more to come. Kaku started spinning like a Beyblade, but Zoro said in Wano he fought a guy who was also long and twisted like a centipede, so he was already fed up with this and decided to finish it off for good so he could go back to his nap. I still can't believe this weirdo really thought he had a chance to outshine Zoro. Rob Lucci orders the Seraphims to destroy the laboratory before Vegapunk can escape, and the guys were already gearing up to do some mischief. Of course, Shaka was already in shock. S-Hawk glides at the speed of light to slice the laboratory in half, while the other two were just exploding stuff. S-Bear even compressed the giant ball and turned it into a tiny one, and that's how the mumps cure was created. Of course, anyone inside the laboratory was already saying their last prayers because in less than 5 seconds everyone would turn into pancakes. Mihawk even combines his swordsmanship with the laser beams that blow up the entire laboratory. Kaku still hasn't figured out his position and says Zoro doesn't stand a chance of getting off this island alive, and the Seraphims got so excited they forgot to stop. They looked like they were in a GIF, with shots fired one after the other. Kaku says they're dragging on too long and orders them to complete the mission already. The laboratory looked like a war zone and they were already losing hope. But then happens the biggest plot twist that changed the whole story of Egghead. Stussy flashes her werewolf fangs and takes a little bite out of Kaku's neck, putting him to sleep instantly. Looks like the Vegapunk's infiltrated ally has finally shown up. Rob Lucci looks back and the giraffe guy is already in deep sleep. Stussy was like a vampire, licking all the blood from the guy, and Tigrinho asks what the heck she's doing. But the girl said she just put him to sleep for a little while, and he should do the same. So yeah, that's the Vegapunk's infiltrated agent, the first successful clone Vegapunk created. Miss Buckingham Stussy, former member of the Rocks. Rob Lucci says he doesn't understand anything and goes straight to attack her, and Stussy asks if he's the type that when he doesn't understand something, he wants to turn others into minced meat right away. Then she dodges Lucci's attack with an optical illusion and grabs him from behind. She sticks a Kairosaki lipstick on him, and I've never seen a guy as lucky as this Rob Lucci, because the girl still takes a big bite out of his neck. She says she knows very well how strong they are and she's not stupid enough to attack directly, and Tigrinho falls flat on the ground. And just so you know, Luffy's fight with Rob Lucci lasted more than 3 episodes while Stussy soloed him and Kaku in 2 minutes. So after all that, she looks at Zoro and starts laughing like a psychopath with tiger blood dripping from her mouth. Episode 1105 of One Piece kicks off with Rob Lucci and Pinocchio lying on the ground like a couple of knocked out cold cuts. Karma for betraying Uncle Iceberg and Polly in Water 7 finally caught up with them. My dude, Brooke's freaking out, wondering why CP0 is fighting amongst themselves. And Zoro's like, not my problem, but is she really putting them to sleep on a Sunday? At noon? Gonna mess up their sleep schedule. Stussy laughs in his face and asks if he's the famous Roronoa Zoro, known as the Ladies' King. She tells him not to worry, but he's like, I really don't get the government. She asks if that up there on the ship isn't the famous Soul King. Isn't he gonna come down and sign an autograph? It's not every day you meet a rock star. But Brooke's shaking in his boots, saying he's scared to death of her. Zoro asks what happened for her to throw down with her buddies without losing the friendship, but she says she's got her own reasons and tells him not to worry because she won't hurt them. Funny, as if she could lay a finger on Zoro, right? He says he doesn't trust someone who betrays their own comrades. Stussy tells the Dendemushi she put the two to sleep, and the Vegapunks are overjoyed, except for Lilith. She says it wasn't necessary because she was gonna blow the heads off the little tiger and crocodile giraffe herself. The Straw Hats can't believe Rob Lucci got taken down. They want to know who she is, and Jinbei asks if Zoro and Brooke are okay. She turns the Dendemushi to Zoro, and the skeleton teleports down from the ship just to say hi. York was already deep in dreamland despite all the commotion. Robin asks who this Stussy chick is. She must be pretty strong to take down those devilish duo. And Shaka says she's been working undercover for the Vegapunks for 20 years. They can't believe the Vegapunks planted a mole in the world's most intelligent organization and she lasted 2 decades. But Stussy says there's still a problem. She's got the same authority level as Rob Lucci, so they can't change the Seraphim's order to destroy everything. Edison says it was more than enough. They're already sprinting to get there. Zoro says if they don't smack those kids down, they'll destroy everyone. And Brooke says he's sure he's seen those faces somewhere before. Zoro agrees and says especially S-Hawk. The guy travels with Jinbei every day, but the only face he recognizes is Mihawk's, who he's seen twice in his life. Who gets a beating never forgets, right? And the kid wasn't playing around. He was blowing everything up. Lilith's cursing everyone because those brats are wrecking the lab. But Edison says at least it's easier to get out now. So she runs ahead to order the Seraphims to stop. But the kid is so fast that before she can finish giving the order, a blast is already coming to take Lilith's head off. But our swordsman is always ready, right? He rushes to slice the attack in half. But don't be fooled. He didn't do it for Lilith. There's no chivalry here. Zoro just wanted to take down that mini swordsman. They start an insane brawl, and Zoro tells the kid he seems more human than Mihawk himself, and asks who this guy is. Lilith's heart is nearly leaping out of her chest from fear. She thought she was about to get turned to dust by S-Hawk. Edison rushes ahead and orders the Seraphims to stop fighting, but Mini Jinbei couldn't care less and launched a bazooka blast before he could finish speaking. Lilith starts falling, but Frankie swoops in just in time to save her. She almost falls for the Cyber Romeo but remembers Edison and worries the kid might have gone down with the ship, but our egg-frying hero pulled through and saved the tin head. Sorry, folks, but the video's ending here because I thought I was recapping One Piece, but it seems like it's turning into Boku no Hero. If it weren't for the Straw Hats, the Vegapunks would have had a total meltdown. Edison's order worked, and the Seraphims stopped fighting. Zoro's all confused, asking what orphanage these kids came from, but Lilith tells him not to worry because these are warriors she's super proud to have built. They won't attack them anymore since there's no one on the island with higher authority, right? No one coming to the island either, right? Sanji starts teasing Zoro, saying this must be too much for his moss head to comprehend, and of course, they start brawling just to keep the tradition alive. Frankie says now they just need to help the Vegapunks escape the island. No more enemies to defeat, right? Back in the lab, everyone's overjoyed that the Seraphims finally stopped attacking. Stussy informs them she put Kairaseki cuffs on Lucci and Kaku, so even if they wake up, they can't transform. Shaka is super grateful because now they can finally escape the island. He even invites her to join them. Soon they'll be inviting researchers onto the Sunny too. They could throw a robot-themed party. Sanji is over the moon that Stussy's coming along. This guy's never seen so many ladies boarding the ship. In the lab, Luffy's yelling for Bonnie and Vegapunk to show up already. They can't leave without the old man. But it wasn't just in Egghead where the punches were flying. Over in Sphinx, Whitebeard's hometown, Marco was chatting with the locals who were scared out of their minds because they'd just been attacked by some corrupt marine. These guys looked more like pirates, all crazed and hunting for Whitebeard's treasure. This Mickey Mouse wannabe showed up, firing shots in the air, and ordered everyone to gather. He said if they cooperated, no one would get hurt. He even claimed that since this land wasn't affiliated with the world government, he could do whatever he wanted because no one would come to defend them. He demanded they spill the beans, but a guy in a hat said they didn't know about any treasure. So this Ratatouille dude threatened to turn them into criminals if they didn't cough up the location of the treasure. He even threatened to shoot every one of the villagers, starting with the kid. But then this old lady stepped up, saying there wasn't any important treasure here and told him to put away his toy gun. She said they wouldn't be treated as humans just because they didn't pay the government. These guys think this is Arlong Park, don't they? The rat-faced guy started laughing, asking if she wasn't afraid to die since Marco wasn't there to protect them. He ordered his soldiers to hold the old lady because he was going to show who was boss. The villagers were freaking out, shouting, for God's sake, she's just an old lady. I know she doesn't pay taxes to put gold teeth in her drip dentures, but cut her some slack. But the guy didn't care and was ready to pull the trigger. That's when the hero appeared. Edward Weevil, aka Whitebeard Jr., came in with a massive swing, sending Ratface flying so far he crashed into a mountain. Weevil shouted that this was his father's land and no one was allowed to touch it. The soldiers were freaking out, wondering why this dude with the wispy mustache was there since the Shichibukai were supposed to be imprisoned after the warlord system was abolished. / the government did send some warships to capture this guy, but he didn't care and beat the snot out of everyone. / Weevil sent the thugs running with their tails between their legs, and the kid said if Whitebeard Jr. hadn't shown up, they'd all be toast. Marco was relieved, but then an old lady came running up, yelling, but Marco, guess who came to crash the party? She said Admiral Ryakujio had shown up, and she couldn't do anything. This is the same scumbag who attacked Wano Country right after Kaido was defeated while everyone was still weak from all the fighting. Weevil was taken down by this guy, who told the jungle-loving Admiral to back off, but the Admiral said, not a chancey. And if you didn't notice, this battered old lady was none other than Stussy. Yes, the same one who just drained Rob Lucci and Kaku dry. She was bawling her eyes out because her son got captured protecting his dad's village, so she told Marco to go after the Marines to get her son back and, of course, to hand over Whitebeard's inheritance. Pineapple Head Marco said she only came here for the inheritance, didn't she? And the old lady started crying to cover it up. She asked Marco if he didn't believe that Weevil was Whitebeard's son, but she said she knew someone who could prove it, and that person was Dr. Vegapunk. But I think Vegapunk has way too much on his plate to worry about doing a DNA test on the kid, right? The whole government is gunning for him, and he's supposed to bother proving that Fluffy is Whitebeard's son? The old man's not even alive to pay child support anymore. Out at sea near Egghead, the entire Marine fleet was on its way to crash the Straw Hats party. A Marine was delivering a suspicious corn cake for Kazara's afternoon tea, and he asked if it had passed the poison test since those sweets were going into the belly of a guy who wasn't all that important, right? So, Borsalino Kazara took it upon himself to deliver the tea. He asked if the old guy had met Vegapunk before. The old man said they crossed paths a couple of times long ago. Yeah, right, more like a few dozen times. Kazara said it was a shame that Vegapunk had actually betrayed the world government. And let's cut the suspense, shall we? This bearded old man was none other than St. J. Garcia Saturn, one of the 5 elders, the highest authorities in the entire world. To put it simply, he's one of those corrupt big shots who want to destroy the world. And anyone who reads the manga knows how many hits this guy has taken without breaking a sweat. Like a simple poison cake would take him down. Unless the guy swallowed a whole chunk of sea stone, he wouldn't be able to use his devil fruit power. Episode 1106 of One Piece kicks off with the government's goons planning to destroy the tube the Vegapunks used to fly with rocket. They wanted to cut off all the old man's escape routes from the island, but just when they were about to fire, someone started blasting them with some insane laser beams, sending the scumbags running for cover. The one putting the fear in everyone was a pacifista. An agent tried to order it to stop messing things up since they're on the same side, only to take a bazooka shot to the face. The pacifista took them all out solo. One of the agents, still standing, wanted to teach the pacifista a lesson. He whipped out a rocket launcher to give the robot a blue screen. Another agent tried to stop him, but it was too late. The pacifista summoned a massive bubble shield that absorbed the entire attack and sent it back, blowing everything up. That's the bubble shield, the strongest shield in the world, created by Dr. Vegapunk. The agents were in a panic because this wasn't just any pacifista, it was a pacifista Mark III, and just one of these guys is stronger than the entire pacifista army that fought in the Paramount War at Marineford. This dude had a sinister look, ordering them to stop fighting and head to Plant B. He was about to fire another bazooka because some idiot still had his gun pointed at him. The only one with a brain told everyone to drop their weapons, or they'd all be toast. The pacifista stopped and said he would take them. He then threw the guys into a cell with a bunch of other government agents. One of them asked why he was doing this since they don't act on their own. He wanted to know who was giving the orders. In a dark alley, our boy Sentomaru was in bad shape after Rob Lucci stabbed him in the back, and he was the one who commanded the pacifista to handle the agent. A researcher was tending to Sentomaru while a bunch of residents thanked him for helping them evacuate safely. But the word safety doesn't exist on this island, my friend, because everything started shaking and Sentomaru asked Uncle Punk what was happening, but he got a cold shoulder. Then he remembered that Luffy promised to get the old man off the island safely. So, it's all good, right? The problem was that the marine communication line was still working fine, but the Vegapunk's line was completely cut off. Sentomaru said that now he was a traitor, so he'd do whatever he wanted. The dude might dance naked in the middle of the island, or, even worse, activate all the pacifista Mark III units on the island to handle the chaos. Honestly, between facing this army of hell and a chubby guy dancing naked, I'd prefer. He summoned a whopping 50 pacifistas and ordered them to ensure that Vegapunk escapes the island on the Straw Hat ship. He also told them to guard the island's coast because he felt something big was about to go down. And get ready, grab your box of tissues because the saddest flashback in One Piece has finally arrived. Mini Vegapunk was yelling at Bonnie not to go near that bubble with Kuma's memories. Then she threw the old man far away to stop him from annoying her. She walked up to the golden bubble and started getting a nasty shock, but she didn't give up and kept going, until she suddenly disappeared and was sent to a completely empty, overgrown place. She heard someone crying, saying they couldn't take it anymore, and went to see what was happening. There was a boy all beaten up, screaming for help because he didn't want to go back at all, and that's when she realized that this snotty kid was her father, Kuma. Meanwhile, back at the lab, the Straw Hats couldn't believe that Vegapunk had vanished. Luffy said he searched the whole island and didn't see any sign of the old man. Usopp couldn't believe he actually searched, so Chopper said Luffy ran so much that the kid's boots don't fly anymore, and Luffy got mad, telling them not to mention it because he can't afford to pay for such an expensive gadget. Usopp was getting crazier than Batman because he wanted to leave this hellhole before more Marines showed up. They couldn't find Bonnie at all, and Shaka said he had been seeing her on the cameras for a while. They yelled that he should have said something when she disappeared, but he said he never lost sight of her. Suddenly, Zoro, Brook, and Stussy arrived dressed in Egghead style. They asked why it was taking so long if they were supposed to leave the island soon. The lab was all wrecked, and Stussy said it was worse than she imagined. Sanji came running up at full speed, saying she looked gorgeous in that futuristic outfit, and she said his compliments were pretty good. It's the first time in his life a woman has given Sanji the time of day. I'm starting to think she might be a guy. I think she might be a trap. Stussy asked Shaka how Atlas was doing. He called Edison and Lilith, who got mad because he was acting like the big boss. Edison said he had just fixed her, and Lilith told him to stop taking all the credit because she helped too. And Atlas showed up brand new, without a scratch. You wouldn't think she was in pieces just a little while ago. Even York woke up to say hi to Atlas, and man, look at the size of York next to Lilith. She was asking if York was really sleeping again in the middle of all this war. Atlas said next time, she'll wake York up with a punch. Sanji was almost having a meltdown, saying one was cute, another was beautiful, and another was super cool, saying there were so many women there that it was the second happiest day of his life, because clearly, the happiest was when he found the real all-blue full of mermaids back on Fishman Island. Luffy asked if they managed to fix Atlas, and the girl thanked him for saving her life, but he said it was nothing, he only did it because she fed them when they were starving. Nami got furious, asking how they dared hurt such a sweet girl. She asked if they hadn't changed at all since Water 7. She said if the leopard man and the giraffe guy came after Robin again, she would beat them up, and saying that now that they're all messed up, handcuffed with Kairosaki chains, is easy. But when the leopard showed his teeth for the first time, she was shaking like a leaf. She was almost ready to kick Rob Lucci and the Easter eggs out of sheer anger, but Robin said there was no need for that because now they can't do anything in this state, and she thanks them for taking such good care of her. So sweet. Stussy was telling Shaka that she did everything to hide her identity, but what she did to those two was heartbreaking. But Shaka says she did everything right because they only managed to turn the tables thanks to her. Stussy wanted to talk to Stella, which is the old Vegapunk, but Shaka says they've got two big problems to deal with. The first is that, as everyone knows, the old man is missing, and the second is that they lost control of the barrier that was protecting them, and that means they can't leave the lab anymore. Now the kids are going to set up camp in Egghead and live there forever, since anyone who tries to leave will get hit by a barrage of lasers that explode anyone who gets too close. Chopper and Usopp start panicking, asking what they're going to do now. Shaka tells them to look for the old man while he tries to fix the barrier, but Frankie asks what's the point of looking for him if he doesn't even show up on the cameras that have a view of the entire lab. He says the cameras do cover the whole lab, but they're forgetting this isn't a mall with electric cameras. They're a bunch of snail that have either moved out of place or passed out after all those attacks from the Seraphim. They aren't paid enough to stay put in the middle of the crossfire recording everything. That's why the other satellites and workers went to look in those blind spots. Pythagoras was already on the treasure hunt, and Nami tells everyone to start looking too, because they have to get off this island as quickly as possible. She wants to find the old man to know where the famous future treasure is. Brooks says he'll go with her, and Edison follows them because he feels they're going to do something reckless. Stussy decides to search on the other side, and Jinbei, the stallion, goes with her too, of course. And naturally, the Supreme Simp runs after her like a puppy. Zoro says, well, let's go look too. But Sanji pops up behind him, telling him to stay exactly where he is. The swordsman says they just need to find an old man with half an apple for a head, but the Supreme Simp asks who will look for Zoro afterward. Even Chopper and Robin asked him to stay put, but they're underestimating Zoro's true potential. They forget that he can get lost even while standing still. Frankie asks where they're going, but Usopp is terrified because the lab is so big it feels like a maze. Then Lilith says that pirates are all dumb and tells them to follow her. She even gives York a good kick because she fell asleep again. Luffy is still exhausted as if he just ran a marathon, and Zoro says he has no idea what they're talking about. He never even gets lost. He asks Luffy why he ran with all his might, and the kid says he only knows how to do things at full power. It's the factory setting that Sensei Oda put in him. Zoro says he never thought he'd see those two punching bags again, and Luffy wonders how Uncle Iceberg is doing, Frankie's famous brother. Suddenly, out of the sky, Morgan's flying balloon appears. He says that the world government is on a crazy mission to eliminate the famous Dr. Vegapunk, and I just want to know how this pigeon found out about it. Who was the guy who sent him a WhatsApp message in the middle of all that chaos? He also says they're going to assassinate the world's greatest scientist for the same reason they destroyed O'Hara. But the government is in trouble with this because Vegapunk is everyone's favorite, since he brought energy for people to charge their phones, turn on their PCs and TVs, and watch Luke animes on YouTube on a Sunday. So to thank this misunderstood genius, leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. And it's not just because of that the old man is a favorite, because he simply has a Yonko on his side, the same one who laughs at everything and has hair whiter than Rob Lucci's powder, Monkey D. Ack Frost. So the cockatoo says that the next cover of the national newspaper will be Emperor Straw Hat Luffy takes Vegapunk hostage in Egghead and goes to war with the Navy. What a scumbag. This bird says that if everyone thinks a pirate started the fight, when Vegapunk ends up down and out, it won't be the government's fault, and after that the government will thank him and give him a nice reward. But there was someone there who didn't like this at all. She said that news was really stupid and asks how he dares to make up something like that, because Luffy would never do such a thing, and this was none other than the great Vivi. Amazing! For those who thought Sabo really killed the girl, take that! My soap would never do that. Along with her was also the weirdo Wapple, telling her to keep it down, because if there's any government spy hidden, they'll be crushed on the spot. Not to mention that Morgans is giving them shelter, so she can't go around bothering everyone like that, but she doesn't care. Said she won't stay silent with all these lies. Asked if he has no ethics. Two of Morgan's maids were having a stroke for lending a dress to Princess Vivi, and said they would never wash them again. The chicken says that until yesterday, she only knew how to cry like a child, and now she's acting all high and mighty, trying to mess up his business. He says he's the only one capable of shaking up the whole world, so whether it's true or false, it's all for entertainment. Then Wapple and Vivi make a face like they know even the devil trembles at the hand of this dirty vulture. Episode 1107 starts with baby Kuma crying his heart out and Bonnie saying, "Dad?" She was about to ask what was happening. Was he a man or a sack of potatoes? But then a bunch of goons show up with a giant stick, telling him to stop running away. The kid was nearly having a meltdown, saying he didn't want to go with them, but they started to drag the kid away, saying if he escaped, it would be their heads on the line. Bonnie was furious, screaming for them to let Kuma go, but she was just running in place, unable to get closer. Later she says, "Oh, I know my father's ability, but she doesn't realize that trying to punch these guys within the memories won't change anything. The guy was almost breaking the kid's arm as he resisted, sending the men flying. He begged them to rip his guts out right there because going with them would be even worse. And what could be so bad that the kid would rather die right there? I don't know. But those bastards didn't care and started beating Kuma with baseball bats until he gave up. Bonnie couldn't stop crying, unable to do anything. Little Kuma kept screaming in pain, begging them to stop because it hurt too much, apologizing to what looked like celestial dragon. He kept shouting in agony, asking someone to save him, for the love of God. And Bonnie got thrown out of the memory bubble right at the beginning of the memory. And that's exactly what happened to Zoro. Remember when he nearly turned to dust just from taking a small piece of Luffy's pain? Well, there was still all that left because that was just the beginning. Bonnie fell to the ground trembling and gasping for air just from seeing the start of the nightmare, and Vegapunk had warned her to stay away. Meanwhile, over at Red Port, the real Kuma was still trying to climb the mountain while the Marines tried to bring him down at all costs. They were shouting to stop him from reaching Mariehua because that would ruin the Marines' reputation. Bonnie knew she would need a lot of courage to face her father Kuma's past, but she had to do it no matter what. Back at the lab, Pythagoras was marching around looking all serious, asking if the old man was around. He could only notice the mess that place was in. All the seraphims were created there, but none of them had any mercy when it came to destroying everything. And for those of you thinking that ChatGPT can't turn against you if you don't say please and thank you, Pythagoras heard a noise and thought it was Stella, but it was just his imagination, or was it? The sound of boots kept coming closer, and the kid looked back, really thinking it was the old man, but someone jumped on him and caused an explosion. Shaka heard everything and asked Pythagoras what was happening, but of course, there was no answer. Nami also started shouting over the radio, asking if everything was alright and if Vegapunk had returned, but Luffy said the old man hadn't come back yet, and Nami was more worried about Zoro, telling him not to leave the spot because they didn't have time to search for another lost person. Out of nowhere, the communication was cut off, and no one could talk anymore. On this island, things are so advanced that even the den mushy snails are smart, so Shaka ordered the snail to move and look for Pythagoras. It could only see the explosion, but a sinister shadow appeared. Shaka was hoping nothing had happened to Tin Head. He had seen something pass by and asked the snail to look down, but a shadow appeared and simply blew everything up just by touching the camera, so they lost the images because the camera snail turned into a kebab. Luffy started calling everyone on the radio, but no one responded, and Zoro said he was so clueless that he even managed to break their radio. Straw Hat Luffy started walking, saying he would go check on Shaka. He told Zoro not to move and got cursed out for free. The shadowy figure was blowing up any camera in its way. This guy was a big deal, not caring about being caught on camera. Nami was shouting for Vegapunk to show up, but it seemed impossible to find the old man. Edison said the place was so big that if they played hide and seek there, the game would last forever. Then Nami started smiling with a twinkle in her eye, saying she finally found something. Edison asked where she saw the old man, but old man, nothing. She was in love with all the jewels there. The kid told her to stop being crazy, but Brooke said it didn't matter since they were leaving anyway, so she grabbed all the diamonds and said it was too heavy, asking if she could come back later. The boy was nearly having a stroke, saying they needed to find the old man, not to mention her bag was so full she couldn't keep searching like that, and Nami went, "Good point, you carry them then." The kid nearly blue-screened at that, so she had no choice but to say she'd leave them there and come back for them later. Edison said, just so she knew, those were all artificial diamonds, and she made a face like, "What, you can make diamonds?" It was a dream come true for her, and the kid just wanted the old man to show up so he could get away from this crazy lady. The mysterious figure kept blowing things up and appearing bit by bit. Chopper and Robin were fascinated by all the technology in that place. The raccoon asked how Atlas's face was still intact if Lucci had blown her up so thoroughly, and she said she could change her face as much as she wanted with all that technology. Robin was fascinated by some organisms lying around, and Chopper was enchanted by the view. He was thrilled they could create organs to help in medicine, and Robin said it was a relief because she thought those were pieces of Vegapunk that had been diced up. Chopper said she was very strained. The supreme simp was like a gazelle, moved by love, while Jinbei was the only real man there, shouting for Vegapunk to appear. Sanji said he never imagined in his wildest dreams that he would take a ship ride with Stussy, and asked if she wasn't at Big Mom's party. Stussy said he was very attentive, and he said, "Of course, how could I not notice such a beautiful woman?" He said from that day on, he became her servant and begged her to call him her little puppy. And there are still crazy people who think this weirdo is better than Zoro. Stussy starts laughing, telling him to wake up and find Stella. The kid stands there, posing like a dog, following her and barking. Never will he be Roronoa Zoro. Jinbei said that the lab was so big it would take forever to search every corner. Stussy tells them to be careful not to cause any unnecessary explosions, especially the dog with his tail on fire. And speaking of explosions, another one happens, revealing the true monster breaking everything. It's none other than S-Snake. Minnie Hancock got tired of life and started blowing everything up just for the fun of it. Shaka was desperate in the control room because he couldn't reach anyone. Luffy shows up, saying his radio was broken too, but he swears he didn't break it. "I wouldn't pay for something like this that's more expensive than my kidneys." He thought Shaka didn't believe him, but Shaka couldn't care less. He was worried about the cameras that kept shutting off, as if someone was turning them off one by one, so he says there must be an intruder in the lab. Frankie and Usopp were also searching for the old man like crazy. Even York woke up from her 10th nap to look for Applehead. Neriba says if they take too long, the government will catch up with them all. He asks what they will do, and Lilith says to use that little toy over there, a bubble gun. And it's been more than 5 episodes since she's been trying to use the thing but hasn't succeeded at all. Frankie says he can't even imagine a water gun causing any damage, so Lilith asks if he wants to test it, and the guy almost has a heart attack. York calls the 3 Stooges to check out the mess happening in front. It was right where the huge explosion had happened, and lying on the ground was, of course, Pythagoras. Usopp was going crazy because the kid was headless. Lilith tells him to wake up, and then they hear someone else coming toward them, but it was just Pythagoras again, this time in head mode, walking around with the little legs and arms he created. Pythagoras was scared to death because he almost got his head blown off, and Lilith was already telling him to spill everything that happened. Then the thing that attacked Pythagoras appears, and York smiled. Tin Head wondered what happened. He didn't know if it was a mistake, but Lilith lost patience and told him to speak up already. He asks where York is, and when he looks, she was there petting a snake. He said, wait, didn't Edison just tell her to wait outside a moment ago? Then when Lilith asked what the heck she was doing, York says she found the cute mini Hancock wandering around, and that cute thing used a love beam and turned York to stone out of nowhere. Episode 1108 of One Piece kicks off with Minnie Hancock putting on an adorable show. She shot a love beam at York, who thought everything was lovely until she realized she was about to turn into a rock. Buddy, at least she turned to stone with that goofy look on her face. S-Snake still came in with bad intentions, ready to kick York's statue to pieces, but luckily, York is tough and didn't chip a bit. Otherwise, she would be literally shattered. God, Usopp was already freaking out, thinking York had passed away, and Lilith didn't understand a thing. Why was a seraphim attacking them? She ordered the little devil to stop moving, but the girl kept walking like it was no big deal. Usopp started throwing shade, saying they have the world's most brilliant brains and can't even stop this brat. And they really couldn't because S-Snake started charging a massive laser to turn everyone into mincemeat. The crew tried to run, but they ended up getting blown away, with Lilith furious that her Vegapunk control didn't do squat. S-Bear was also on a rampage and shot a bazooka blast at Zoro. He had to dodge while holding the 2 punching bags who were still knocked out. Luffy heard the explosion and rushed to see what was happening. Then Zoro tossed the 2 onto the ground and said he couldn't wait to fight that guy again. He started trading blows with S-Hawk without losing any camaraderie, but the kid decided to play dirty and slashed towards Rob Lucci and Kaku to finish them off. Zoro ran to block the attack, and the guy had a look of what the heck. Zoro still asked where he was aiming, saying his aim was trash. Thought the Seraphim was back for a rematch. Huh? Man, was he naive. Zoro yells to Luffy for backup, and the kid's all confused. Just a moment ago, these robot dudes were allies, and now they're enemies again. Shaka dashes forward, demanding to know what the hell they're doing. Zoro quips that these kids must be factory defects, but Vegapunk insists that's impossible. They decide to take down the brats, but Astronaut Head begs them to hold off, saying he'll try to stop them with the command hierarchy. He orders them to stop and asks who's controlling them. Zoro's like, is it really that easy? He mentions they came to attack CP0, but he can't let these punks head back to the lobby in cuffs. Just as he's sheathing his swords, the Seraphims start prepping another insane bazooka blast. The crew dodges again while Luffy remarks that they're ignoring Shaka's orders. Meanwhile, against S-Snake, the gang's plummeting after the explosion. If it keeps up, they're all gonna bite the dust. So Lilith yells at them to activate the float mode on their boots unless they want to be pancake batter on the ground. Then we see everyone activating their boots, along with a great view of the golden goose. Everyone except Usopp, who manages to be dumb enough to activate his boots upside down and buries himself headfirst into the ground like an ostrich. Lilith tries to contact Shaka and gets pissed when he doesn't respond, but Pythagoras tells her to stop being dumb. They've lost the signal. Up above, S-Snake watches the chaos with a smug look that would make anyone cry in the shower for 3 days. Just kidding, otakus don't shower. Frankie asks if he can blast the girl with another rocket since she's not obeying anyone, but Lilith questions his sanity, saying it's impossible to defeat her. She was created by the Vegapunks to be way stronger than any human, maybe even stronger than the original Shichibukai. Comment below on who you think would win in a one-on-one, Boa Hancock or S-Snake. And speaking of the devil, S-Snake jumps off the cliff to finish off the crew once and for all. Luffy and the others narrowly escape the explosions. Shaka says they're in deep trouble now. If the Seraphims aren't following his orders, it means they're being controlled by another Vegapunk. Lilith, Edison, Pythagoras, Atlas, York, or Stella. One of them is a traitor trying to wipe out everyone. Shaka says that if this whole being trapped on the island and losing communication thing is part of a plan, it means someone's trying to screw everyone over big time. Luffy is already shook, and even the 2 punching bags wake up just to curse out the Seraphims. Kaku begs Luffy and Zoro to cut them some slack and take off their sea stone cuffs so they can help fight the Seraphims, but then Kaku looks scared, Lucci looks desperate, and as for the Straw Hats, you can guess they probably loved the idea. Back at the lab, it's filled with CP0 agents looking like they're on their last legs and starving. One of them says they've been stuck there for 2 months without any food. It's a wonder they haven't started eyeing each other like snacks. They explain that 2 months ago, they came to investigate Egghead, but when they tried to leave, they were attacked by Vegapunk's sea beasts. The other agents who came to investigate their disappearance ended up in the same place, and everyone thought this guy was behind it all, but he was just as messed up, with his tongue practically dragging on the floor. Dr. Vegapunk was locked up with them, shackled in his old man form. He apologizes to the agents and says he has no idea what's happening on Egghead. The old dude starts having visions of J. Garcia's Saturn coming to Egghead and Professor Clover's library, thinking it's all too weird. How could his research on the poneglyphs have been leaked to the government unless there's a traitor? At Marine HQ, they've sent over 100 warships to Egghead. Looks like things are about to get wild. Sentomaru shows up, telling all researchers to evacuate the island. They show Egghead Island along with Sabaody and O'Hara in flames. Looks like someone's about to light this whole place up. Someone asks Sentomaru what's going on for him to send pacifistas all over the island. He explains that a long time ago, there was an island called O'Hara that disappeared from the map after rebelling against the world government. It all happened at the world's largest library with the smartest folks around, including Little Robin, of course. But they were researching forbidden poneglyphs and got hit with a massive bombardment that wiped out the entire island. And as you already know, there was only one survivor, the little Nico Robin, who, at 8 years old, already had a bounty of 80 million. Sentomaru says that even though Vegapunk is the smartest dude in the world, the government still decided to off him. So, that means he must have seriously messed up to end up like this. That's why something even worse than O'Hara could happen in Egghead in the blink of an eye. He tells the Straw Hats to get off the island and asks what the heck they're still doing up there. And that's easy. They're still standing there with those dumbfounded faces after the agents asked to form an alliance. Zoro asks if, after they beat the Seraphims, they're supposed to just let themselves get cuffed again. Kaku says, of course, after taking down the kids, we'll surrender and let ourselves get cuffed again. And Luffy's like, oh, then cool, let me take off these cuffs. But Zoro headbutts him, telling him to stop being an idiot because it's obvious they're lying. But they didn't have time to think because Mini Mihawk is already sending another blast their way. Zoro notices the kid is using Mr. One's technique of turning body parts into blades. That's a game changer. The kid's already the Seraphim of the world's strongest swordsman, and now he can turn even his butt into a blade. Then S-Hawk makes his leg go back to normal, and Zoro is sure that's really the bald guy's fruit. Man, this green blood in the Seraphims is something else. The episode starts with Kid making the most of his last moments, realizing just what kind of mess he's gotten himself into. Run while you still can, buddy. Shanks, still showing some mercy, gives him a chance. He asks if Kid wants to fight or hand over his road poneglyphs and flee, but Shanks is too cruel. Man, he gave him the option to fight so Kid would think he stood a chance. But what's about to go down here is a one-sided massacre. While things were about to blow up in Elbaf, the chaos was already in full swing over in Egghead. Everything was a mess because York betrayed the Vegapunks and handed them over to the world government. But it wasn't overnight that she decided to become a rebel. She came up with a whole La Casa de Papel style strategy beforehand. It all started with York running around with that innocent look on her face, calling the Seraphims so cute you almost wish a truck would fall on her head. She asks for their help, and the kids come down to listen. She calls them over for some gossip and says that the world government decided to eliminate her along with the old man. She asks if they aren't just a pain, and little Hancock replies, yes, they are a pain, but they messed with the wrong person because York has a plan. She tells the Seraphims to take care of the obstacles while she handles the rest. Since she locked the barrier, no one could enter or leave, so all they had to do was send everyone 6 feet under. Yeah, not literally the ground since they were up in the clouds, but you get it, right? She says that when the Seraphims rebel, people will want to know who gave the new order, but if they find out it was her, she won't be able to handle everyone at once. So, she asks S-Snake to turn her to stone in front of everyone so no one suspects her, but she tells her to unpetrify her afterward. Got it? And little Hancock goes. Hi. Then it's time for the big plan to start. Everything's blowing up on the island, and Sentomaru's furious pacifistas are full of rage. The researchers are running for their lives, trying to escape Egghead as fast as they can, because this place is about to become a battlefield. But speaking of battles, let's get to the fight everyone's been waiting for. Sailing through the waters of Elbaf, the island of the giant warriors in the New World, is Eustace Kid, asking his crew if they're ready, and at least they're confident, saying they just defeated Big Mom and now they're up against another emperor. The time has finally come. He tells them to fight with all their might, even if it means turning into spaghetti. And the crew of rockers, emos, and depressed folks, or rather, the Suicide Squad, all go. Dying, that's our thing. Along the way, a creepy, scary figure appears, saying they'll never have a chance to beat Shanks, but it's just this toad-faced guy who's a bit off his rocker. There's also an old man who can't control his dentures. He says, no way, I'm outta here, and this weird princess saying she won't let them beat the boss. Of course, Kid is getting mad because Shanks only has idiot allies, but Killer tells him not to drop his guard because there are some famous faces among those idiots. Shanks is getting ready to leave, and even this monkey is excited for this humiliation. This Tarzan tells him the allies have confronted the enemy, but the red-haired tells them to call them back. Three stooges show up, saying they won't let the enemies lay a finger on the boss. But he goes, I got this. But they're delaying the fight because a bunch of ladies are clinging to Shanks, begging him not to leave, and he's all flustered. Even the giants start teasing the red-haired, saying no one will let him go alone. But it's no use begging, he has to go because a dangerous guy has arrived. He tells the ships to turn back again, or they'll be called weaklings for losing so many men, and everyone starts cracking up. The kid who looks like a mini sumo wrestler tells the boss to relax, they'll handle that brat. But Shanks warns them not to underestimate the enemy because he's worth 3 billion berries. And think of a humble guy. Even though he could wreck that enemy ship with a single blink, he still pretends Kid has a chance to win. Shanks asks if the wounds from Wano have healed, and Usopp's absentee dad says they should be, because they're itching for a fight again. The red-haired asks if there's any news about Blackbeard, but Bob Marley over there says no. He hasn't shown up at Pirate Island or Wano, where they were waiting for him. Hongo hands over a scroll full of info about Captain Kidd, and Shanks starts analyzing it. It's like when you start studying 5 minutes before the exam, you know? And this guy's glow up from the mind map is crazy because look at how he was back in East Blue. Kid's crew is about to face 9 enemy ships at once. Killer even recognizes some of them from wanted posters. Kid starts gearing up for the fight, and he doesn't mess around. He pulls in all the nearby metal, even the screws from the enemy ship come flying. He says he doesn't care who the opponents are, because he's going to take them out in 10 seconds with his damned punk. And with that 07 on his weapon plus punk at the end, could Eustace Kid be the 7th Vegapunk? The enemy's weapons were pulled in, and even the ships were being dragged into the mess. He was about to blast all the enemies in one shot, but actually, he wasn't aiming at that bunch of weaklings. He wanted to go straight for Shanks, and anyone in his way would turn to dust, so he fires a wicked laser that blows up all the ships at once, eliminated 9 warships in the blink of an eye. Those who fell into the sea survived, but it didn't take long for the ship to fall on top of them too. And I'm not going to lie, I didn't see that coming. He could have used a laser like that in Wano and wiped out half of Kaido's henchmen in no time. Shanks wasn't expecting that either and orders the fleet to spread out, because if everyone stays together, that sneaky redhead will wipe them all out. He tells Dory and Broggy to get ready because the big moment has arrived. Everyone's preparing for the showdown while Beck lights up a joint to fight calmly. Then Shanks zooms off like Superman, and the cheeky stoner says he must have seen a terrible future. Kid is already gearing up for the next insane bazooka blast to wipe out Shanks' crew, but Shanks summons a creepy griffin that makes the kid tremble. Then he unleashes a sick commissary to slice that toy in half. Shanks' Conqueror's haki was so strong that the rock band passed out on the spot. The ship's windows shattered, cannonballs exploded, and a giant spirit bomb appeared over the ship. With a single strike, the redhead did all that and sent Kid flying. He crashed to the ground like a sack of potatoes and immediately regretted picking a fight with this monster. He started losing consciousness and was about to head straight to heaven. It's that classic moment when you see your life flash before your eyes. He remembers the day he told Killer they just needed one more road poneglyph to become the Pirate King. He started mocking Kaido, Big Mom, Shanks, calling them a bunch of old-timers who didn't stand a chance against him. And the next scene is going to be heavy. Ha, kids, don't watch. Kid says he will be the Pirate King, and Killer starts laughing, so he turns around to ask why that bastard is laughing. But Killer is all torn up, standing while the ship is on fire. The subordinates are screaming for the captain to wake up, but he's not opening his eyes. He's not breathing, not moving. He's not alive anymore. Killer tried to jump in front of the attack to protect Kid, but he took all the damage too. Then Shanks starts walking towards them with a deadly glare. Everyone kneeled and surrendered, begging not to send their boss to the depths of hell. I think it's a bit late to ask for that, my friend. The scarecrow-looking guy tells the crying rocker to bring the road poneglyphs right away, then hands them to Shanks, saying these are all they have, begging not to take their lives. The Emperor's ship pulls up beside them, and the kids were already freaking out. Shanks boards the ship, and everyone looks at the island in despair. The giants were preparing a devastating attack that would make the enemies regret being born. They shout to those inferior humans that if they point a gun at someone's home, they have to be prepared to face the consequences, because there's no mercy here. Then they deliver a joint attack to cut the ship in half and obliterate Kid's pirates from the face of the earth. And it was at that moment, in the Sea of Elbaf, the island of the New World's warrior giants, that the Kid pirates, led by Captain Eustace Kid, were completely wiped out from the world. A seagull lands on the wreckage of what was once a ship and watches closely what happens to those who mess with Shanks, the red-haired. After Kid Kobe was kidnapped by Blackbeard, he ended up on the island where you blink once, and 20 pirates are on your back to steal your wallet. Will Kobe be able to escape this gang of thugs? The episode starts with a girl in glass slippers flying through a dark dungeon. 2 guys were playing cards, and she calls them a bunch of unemployed bums. She demands they hand over the cell keys. The punks asked who she thinks she is. She was none other than Zoro's #1 fan. In goth style, Perona summoned ghosts 100 times creepier than those from Thriller Bark. She charged at the scaredy cats, and they started trembling. Instantly, they became more depressed than a fan of Belle Delphine, saying they were as cowardly as a fly on a pile of dung. Perona smirked slyly and grabbed the keys easier than taking candy from a baby. Meanwhile, what was Kobe up to? Just some calisthenics, doing handstand push-ups with the weight of that cannonball on his foot. The ghost girl passed cell after cell, but only found guys who didn't seem very eager to leave, until she found a weirdo upside down who lost his balance when he saw her. He even took off his glasses to not look like a nerdy fan of My Hero Academia. She gave him a thorough look and asked if he was the famous hero Kobe who stopped the Great War. Yet he still got captured, so he was nothing but a weakling. But she was in a good mood and said she would help him get out. All he needed to do was free Master Moria, who was in a separate cell. Pink Hair asked if Gecko Moria was also there and if she wanted him to cooperate with pirates, and that was exactly it, because the boss's life was in danger. She wanted him, a marine captain, to help a dangerous pirate like Moria escape. She must be out of her mind, right? 2 minutes later, a cowboy bursts into a bar, yelling that Captain Kobe escaped from Hakinosu, the pirate island. But instead of being worried, these bastards were thrilled, because now that he escaped, he wasn't Blackbeard's prey anymore. So, the Cross Guild would be paying for his head. Kobe was still a big catch because marine captains are usually worth only 1 star. But the kid was tough, right? So Mihawk and Crocodile were offering a 5-star bounty, worth 5 treasure chests of 500 million berries each. They got all hyped and started hunting him like crazy. But of course, he didn't want to escape alone. He was taking a bunch of slaves with him. He told them to stop calling themselves slaves because they were just a bunch of victims who unfortunately got captured by pirates. This giant skull had a life of its own and was making a mean face, and it wasn't even hungry. His name was Pizarro, and he was feeling an unbearable itch on his left pack, which happened to be where the slaves to be sold at the auction were kept. He got furious, saying the slaves had escaped, and the thugs were all happy, asking if they could go chop them up, but obviously not. The skull ordered them to bring everyone back alive, especially Kobe, or else he would snitch to Teach. The slaves couldn't understand how that boulder was talking. Kobe told them to run to escape in time, but they gave up and told him to escape alone because they would only slow him down. But he begged them not to lose hope like that, because he was going to use himself as bait so they could escape. He took off running, and everyone started crying with happiness. Shiryu of the Rain shows up, asking why Pizarro himself doesn't capture them, and he says if he does that, Teach will skin him alive. And this crew is full of crazies with overpowered devil fruits. While Shiryu had the invisibility fruit that belonged to that pervert Absalom, Pizarro had the island fruit, and whenever he moves, he breaks something. Vasco Shot shows up after downing his 8th bottle of booze, asking if he can go after them. The mage and bull-looking guy said if they set the whole town on fire, they'd have nowhere to run, and this bastard's devil fruit had the power to make him drunk, because why not? But the statue man was already telling him to drop it because he would cause a massive fire, and Teach would be furious. Then the baby Thais Carla asks if he'd rather let Wolf handle it, but that was out of the question. That guy was Thais Carla's dad. If he moved, the whole town would be wiped off the face of the earth like Lelusia. Kobe was sneaking around, trying to buy more time for the slaves to escape, but everywhere he went, there were pirates after him, until he bumps into some magic balloons from this frog-faced girl and turns all red and kawaii. He apologizes, but she says he doesn't need to because she's going to make a fortune by bringing in Mr. 5 Star's head. Kobe, being no fool, takes off. A bunch of thugs chasing him, and he almost gets shot in the ear like Donald Trump. 20 people chasing him, and the kid was just thinking about buying more time for the slaves to escape. And now comes the flashback of Kobe coming face to face with the dreaded Blackbeard. Check out the monstrous aura of this guy. He tells Kobe he wants to turn Hakinosu into a recognized nation, a nation that partners with the world government. The usual corruption, right? They pay a fee to the celestial dragons, and in return, the Marines can't hunt the pirates on the island. And there were Teach's badass crew members. Van Augur with such precise aim he can hit you on the move from 3 countries away. Pizarro, who broke his teeth from eating too many rocks. Doc Q, who sneezes and gives you leptospirosis. Vasco Shot, who wants to drink all the booze in the world. Shiryu, who does obscene things while invisible. And of course, the ex-admiral of the Marines who turned to a life of crime, Kazana Kiji. Not wanting to spoil anything, but this guy's going to be dangerous. Ha! Marshal D. Teach wanted to become the king of the nation, of the Blackbeard Kingdom, and he asks what Kobe thinks, but the kid says it's ridiculous. No one would accept a pirate country in the government, but the bastard tells him not to throw cold water on his dream. After all, people's dreams never end, right? And he's going to use Kobe as a bargaining chip, but the kid says that would be the biggest waste of time, because he's a member of SWORD. The big nose had no idea what he was talking about, so Akiji, who knew a bit about the Marines, told him to give up on the exchange, because since Kobe is from SWORD, it means he is but isn't part of the Marines at the same time. He gave up his honor code, so it's like he's a Marine soldier who resigned. That means he can fight any Yonko without asking for permission from the higher-ups. They can do whatever they want and ignore government orders, but of course, because of that, the Marines don't care about him. He can can be executed, beaten, tortured, and they won't give a damn about the kid. And Big Nose says that's the difference between those errand boys who need permission to attack, but he's still not changing his plans. He's going to try the exchange anyway, because even if he's from this sword thing, everyone calls him a hero. Will the Marines really abandon him like that? Because if you don't know, the world government is just like the heroes and the boys. They don't want the world to know the truth about the crimes they commit, so if needed, they do what they did with Lelougia and wipe out the entire country. Teach says he's sure it will work, and tells them to take him to the brig in the meantime. Back to the present, Kobe was still running from that bunch of pirates eager for his head. He was still worried because he helped a pirate, but he had to do it to escape. Right, as if it wasn't a pirate who saved him in the first episode of the anime. At the port, there was a long-haired guard who just wanted to go after the 5 stars now, but he spots a marine ship arriving sneakily. Kobe was hiding behind some crates and hears an explosion in the middle of the town, while the pirates shouted that 3 marine soldiers were kicking butt. He didn't understand anything and asks if someone came to save him, but immediately he turns red, saying he has no right to wish for that. There were 3 marine gorillas beating the crap out of those low-tier pirates. They looked like twins. They were so alike. One of them was Luffy of the Straw Hat. He ate too much meat and grew a little mobster mustache so no one would recognize him, but you can't fool the old man here, right? They were getting showered with bullets, but it had no effect. The Straw Hat Kid even got shot in the left eye, but he was totally fine. One of the big guys even lost his head to get smart, but he turned into a clay blob and just reformed himself. A bearded pirate said some buildings were moving, and the Aladdin guy told him he was just too drunk, but there was a girl whipping the wall, telling it to be a good boy and move along. She kept whipping the building and cursing at it like a crazy person. She looks at those two and asks why they are staring at her. Looks like they want to be the next ones to play with her. They trembled when they saw she was from the Marines. That was Kajaku, Rear Admiral of the Marines and Sword. She invited those babies to come have some fun with her. Meanwhile, Kobe was already surrounded by thugs pointing some serious firepower at him, and even though Pizarro ordered them to bring the kid alive, they were getting ready to unleash a hail of bullets on him. It seemed like it was over, but on that Marine ship was Tashiji with her 4 eyes, the reincarnation of Kuina, and of course, the mighty and true hero of the Marines with fire in his eyes, telling his young grasshopper Kobe to hold on because daddy's coming. The most anticipated moment of the year has finally arrived. A devastating punch from a crazy old man that's capable of destroying an entire island. Are you ready for the galaxy impact? Episode 1114 kicks off with Kobe surrounded by a bunch of lowlifes with no future. He was completely screwed, not just because he was outnumbered, but also because the kid was tied up with a ball and chain. But at the most crucial moment, a girl with a Hello Kitty and Care Bears look appears on the rooftop. The pirates aim their firepower at Kobe's chest, and he makes a leap. Only, he forgot to jump after they shot, and they all opened fire on him without him being able to dodge. But suddenly, all the bullets turned into flowers, and the boss was left all cute and confused with that pretty flower. But he still asked what the heck was going on. This hippo-looking guy says it was an invention by Dr. Vegapunk that earned him the Nobel Peace Prize. But that's probably not what they wanted to hear. It was Hibari, the cutie, who was on the rooftop shouting for Kobe to stay with her, but she quickly turned all red, saying she didn't mean it like that. She shot off the spring flowers and told the kid to escape while they couldn't attack, and if he's hungry, she's got a lunchbox for him, rice with roast chicken to keep the kid all jacked. Meanwhile, on another rooftop, there was this weirdo oozing mud from his hands. His name was Prince, but he looked more like the budget Zoro. He was on a Discord call with the crew and said the rescue the nerd mission was a success. This bush-haired guy was spawning those creepy clay marines, and of course, it was him who sent those clay marines. He said they were going to kill 2 birds with 1 stone because not only were they saving Kobe, but they were also going to arrest that bunch of losers who've never even seen a work ID. The pirates wanted to get out of there before they ended up in the slammer, but when they looked around, they were trapped inside a circle of buildings. You thought that princess was just whipping the building for fun? You don't know anything, kid. She was setting up a trap for those scoundrels the whole time. The classic Arapuka. And now it's time for the great hero to shine, right? Tashiji says everything's ready, and Helmeppo, shaking in his boots, tells everyone to hold on tight. Everyone's got their methods, right? While Frankie installed the galactic fart to make the Sunny take off, old man Garp goes with good old-fashioned brute force. He punches the air, creating a gust of wind that makes the ship take off at the speed of light. Back on the island, Hibari throws down a ladder and tells Kobe to climb up already, but the kid stands there for half an hour and asks if they came to rescue him. No, you idiot! They came just to arrest the pirates and then throw you into the sea with that cannonball so you can sink along with your incompetence. You baboon! So he thanks them, and Hibari gets this look like, oh my god, I want to marry this moron. The pirates were losing their minds, and Kobe didn't understand a thing, but as soon as he looked up, he went completely nuts, because there was simply a marine ship with a pit bull head flying through the sky. Shiryu and the drunk Vasco shot were just watching and thinking, that guy's got guts. The scumbags started running because that little little boat was about to turn them into mashed pudding, but everyone stopped to see that monster on top of the dog. Wasn't he supposed to be retired? Yeah, but the legendary hero didn't care. Garp was cracking up, shouting at Kobe that he was here to save him. The kid was in disbelief, and the island was looking like a pirate anthill, but it was about to become a graveyard, because the old man activated his Super Saiyan mode and came walking with Conqueror's Haki at full power. He jumped off the ship, preparing a sinister punch that shined like a shooting star. Kobe couldn't believe Gramps was doing this for him, and Garp asked who they thought they kidnapped. By this time, that bunch of losers had already crapped their pants. Then the old man says that Kobe isn't just the future of the Marines, he's also his young grasshopper, and now they're going to pay. And if you're smart, you'll put on a helmet and fasten your seatbelt because the devil's punch has arrived. The old man came in with a punch so terrifying it turned into outer space itself. He was falling like a meteor, screaming Galaxy Impact 2, and he wiped that island off the face of the earth, obliterated all the buildings, pirates, and sent everything flying, including Kobe, who was flailing around like a kite but managed to land safely on a tower. He and Hibari watched from a distance at what some would call a nuclear bomb, but others know as a punch. While he was falling, Garp was laughing his head off, arms crossed, thinking, I'm retired, but I can still humiliate anyone here. Now the problem was how that ship was going to land without shattering into pieces. The pirates couldn't even move from fear as Garp landed with style. Then, at the last second, the Zoro of the dark web made a soft mud cradle for the ship to land in, like a fluffy pillow. And check out the damage that a single galaxy impact from Garp caused. If he destroyed the entire city like this in his old age, Garp in his prime, no way, man, he could have split the world in half with that punch. Somehow, the pirates survived and started shouting that they'd make this old man pay, but the Marines told them not to take another step because they're under arrest in the name of the law. Buddy, Garp takes a good look around but says he's not satisfied because he's out of shape. I'm telling you, if he were in his prime, even the Straw Hats over in Egghead would have felt the quake. Even Enel on the moon would have felt the power. But the pirates got full on mad, telling the old man to go back to his retirement home because he destroyed the entire city and still had the nerve to say he wasn't using his full strength. Kobe comes running to talk to Garp, while Helmeppo, who was just keeping an eye on things, says he knew Kobe was alive, but in reality, he's crying like crazy, thanking God he didn't end up as a pancake. Kujaku said Garp is always this over the top, but the prince was fuming because the old man said Kobe is the future of the Marines. Now he's going to have to take down the kid. All the Marines were overjoyed that Kobe was okay, and Tashiji was calling him to come back home, and he just couldn't believe it. First, he thought nobody was going to come save him because he's with Sword, but in the end, even those who aren't with Sword came to rescue the kid. Garp asks why he's still lugging around that ball, and Hibari says they couldn't get the cuffs off. She was about to ask the Vice Admiral to destroy them, but suddenly her body started freezing up, and she turned into a popsicle. Luckily, Kobe caught her before she hit the ground, or she would have been totally screwed. No one could believe it, and Garp had a deadly glare in his eyes because he came to save his current disciple but ended up finding his former one too. Akiji shows up, telling them to chill out and asking what they think they're doing. Kobe asks if he's lost his mind and tells him to thaw Hibari out. Meanwhile, the pirates were cheering because Captain Kazan arrived. The kid begs the Iceman to thaw out Hibari, but Garp says it's no use. Akiji couldn't let Kobe escape while Blackbeard was away, right? If you're living under a rock and don't remember why Akiji left the Marines, here's a recap. 2 years ago, there was the epic battle to decide who'd be the next fleet admiral between Kazan and that bastard Akainu, but after 10 days of non-stop beatdowns, the baker came out on top, except Ice Cream refused to serve under Akainu and resigned. Okay, so he left the Marines, turned rogue, cool, but how did an ex-admiral end up in Blackbeard's crew? And I'll tell you, young Grasshopper, it all started on an island in the New World. Blackbeard's pirates showed up, but everything was frozen solid. Everyone was running scared of them, and Teach was asking who the hell did all this, but he didn't really need to ask, right? Because there was only one person in the world capable of that, and of course, it was Akiji. He froze Doc Q, Vasco Shot, and even Wolf, who's bigger than the entire island. So, naturally, Teach was gonna tell him to thaw out his guys, right? But the Ice Uncle told him to quit whining, and he warned him not to even think about making an earthquake, or his men would go from popsicles to slushies. Plus, as captain, Blackbeard should have known his men started it, right? Not to mention they messed with the wrong guy who just quit his job, so he wasn't having any of it. Episode 1115 of One Piece kicks off with Blackbeard fuming because Akiji turned all his men into popsicles. The old witch in Van Augur, not wanting to get caught in the crossfire, slipped away because things were about to get real. Teach throws a punch loaded with armament Haki, ready to wreck the whole place. He asks if Akiji's all pissed off because of Akainu, and the Ice King starts freezing his drink while the lowlife was building up a cloud of smoke blacker than an old beater's exhaust. But 2 minutes later, they're cracking up and downing shots. Burgess calls for more booze, and the two are having a contest to see who can handle more liquor. Teach asks what Akainu said, and Kuzan stands up all pissed, saying, "Two comrades fighting to the death. I gotta admit, it makes my heart burn, but that's just because he's made of magma." But the ice cream man took such a beating that he lost a leg. People asked if he at least managed to take an arm off the volcano head, but you know how it is. Just getting close made ice cream start to melt. At least he left some scars behind. Speaking of scars, that old witch tells Blackbeard that the iceberg over there might know the man with the burn scar, but he had no clue what she was talking about. Jesus Burgess mentions that there are 4 road poneglyphs scattered across the world. Big Mom and Kaido each had one, but the Bum Squad hasn't been able to find the other 2, and rumors say one of them is with the famous man with the burn scar. And this guy is so mysterious that the Straw Hats only need his road poneglyph to gather them all and head to Laugh Tale. After hearing all that, Akiji says, man with a burn scar? Might be me, but he had just gotten that scar from a Kainu. Legend has it that this guy sails on a black, creepy ship, and anyone who gets close is swallowed by a giant whirlpool he creates. They think this guy has a devil fruit and works for the world government, and if that's true, everyone's screwed, because if the last road poneglyph is with the government, they can crush the dreams of all pirates searching for the One Piece. So, Blackbeard asks if Akiji knows anything, but he says he doesn't even like thinking about those poneglyphs, and he would definitely remember if he'd seen one of those red stones in O'Hara. The only thing he recalls is that his best friend rebelled against the government and the sad eyes of a little girl who lost everything. Then Burgess pipes up, get out of here with that depressing talk. Man, Luffy asks what they're going to do, because it'd be great to get their hands on that ice cream fruit, but Akiji heard that and froze the whole place. Doc Q, Vasco Shot, Stronger, Pizarro, and even the brute Burgess, they turned into ice statues in 2 seconds flat. That nutcase Shirius says he's down to steal the devil fruit, so Kazan whips up an ice storm and says, oh, if I wanted to, I would have already, but Teach tells him to stop and apologizes for what his idiot crew member said. What he really wanted to know was if the popsicle over there wanted to join his crew. Tweedledee and Tweedledum were like, you've lost it, Captain. Did he freeze your brain too? But now, Mr. Chill was unemployed, right? So Blackbeard asks him which side he's gonna choose. He says his sense of justice is different from those marine scumbags, but Akiji tells him to stop being an idiot. Does he really think he's gonna join the crew of a low-life pirate just because they shared a few bottles of booze? But Teach tells him he doesn't know anything about pirates. They're not a bunch of buddies hanging out. The only thing that matters to them is mutual interest. Now Akiji's free and can do whatever he wants, and that's exactly what he did. After remembering all the corruption he had to endure while following the government, he finally switched side. Now, he was about to throw down with his former marine mentor. Garp tells him to unfreeze Hibari, let Kobe escape, and come back to the marine. Yeah, right. Anything else you want? Maybe a coffee and a to-go sandwich while I'm at it. Everyone's begging the Iceman, but he doesn't care. He says the old man hasn't changed at all and still says the first thing that pops into his head. Then he starts freezing the ground and creating another ice storm, saying he can't allow any of this to happen. So the old geezer tells Kobe to step back because it's time for the real fight. Kuzan says he respects Garp's way, but now he's living life his way, and no old man who just escaped the nursing home is gonna stop him. But it wasn't just the nursing home he busted out of. This guy blew up the asylum wall with the gate wide open, the biggest escapee from the loony bin, but he falls right into Akiji's trap, who freezes the air and traps the old man's feet. He hurls an ice ball like a bowling ball to turn Garp into an iceberg. The Marines are freaking out while the scumbags are partying. Akiji asks if Garp is willing to send his former student to hell just to save his beloved pupil, but the Vice Admiral tells him to stop being an idiot because he taught the kid not to live in the past, and he shatters that ice like it's nothing. Dodging the ice throw, he starts smashing everything in his path. Kuzan has to dodge his own ice boulders that the old man is deflecting while launching a bunch of snowballs at the grandpa. The old man pulls a Fortnite move and destroys the base of the tower to bring it all down at once. He camouflages in the smoke to catch Akiji off guard. The ex-admiral tries to freeze the old man's arm, but he shatters it with Conqueror's Haki and hits him with a crazy blue hole, slamming Kazan into the ground like a meteor. He creates a crater in the ground, and the whole island starts shaking. Even though Akiji tried to protect himself with ice, he falls into a hole so deep it looks like he got swallowed by a black hole. But to distract from the beating Popsicle Man is taking, let's check out what his boss is up to in the meantime. Over on Winter Island, Blackbeard was in rough shape, but he was laughing his head off. He had just humiliated Law and left him completely wrecked on the ground. Their submarine was dust, and they couldn't even call themselves pirates anymore. The Bum said that the 100 pirates whose hearts lost old back at Rocky Port still get scared just hearing his name on Pirate Island. So if he brought Law's heart back, they'd be over the moon. Not to mention, they'd also get their hands on the kids Op Op No Mi. Beepo was hanging on by a thread, but he had to save the captain no matter what. He grabbed a little bag with a rumble ball that Chopper made for him in case of emergencies. Teach was debating whether they should sell the Operation Fruit or use it for themselves, since it could give him eternal youth. Not to say anything, but it might be a bit late for you to want to be young again, buddy. He was about to extract the devil fruit from Law when Beepo transformed into a giant beast that would make even the devil tremble. With one swipe, he sent Burgess and Teach flying while Meanwhile, Law just watched, completely baffled. The bum was asking how he could go Sulong when there wasn't even a moon. Van Augur fired 3 shots at the kid, but Beepo blocked them all with a giant chunk of mountain. Then the shooter bailed out of there, and Teach ended up taking the hit. He appeared behind the big bear but took some monstrous karate strikes and ended up on the other side of the island. Beepo ran over to check on the captain, but he couldn't stay in that form for long and collapsed. But he used all his strength to crawl toward the sea with Law. Law was begging him to go back because he couldn't leave his crew behind, but there was nothing they could do now. Beepo told the captain to trust them because they always find a way to escape. He dodged the rocks Burgess was hurling while telling Law not to turn into bacon, and that's how it ended. On Winter Island, the Heart Pirates submarine sank, and Law's crew was completely defeated. The Cross Guild is finally in action, and they're paying more than a bounty hunter for anyone who brings in the head of a marine. Now they're aiming to spread terror across the entire world. In this episode, we're also going to see the sacred monster and idol of this channel, so buckle up because this video is going to be pure fire. Buggy was throwing a massive party with the Cross Guild members. If you're wondering why he's puffed up like that, it's because he ditched the pirate life and now identifies as a kite. But while these jobless folks were partying, Sengoku sent this toothless guy to help out a city being attacked by pirates. He rushes to help a kid who collapsed on the ground and says he's going to take him back home. But then a scumbag sneaks up behind him after checking out a wanted poster and stabs the poor guy. The whole world loved this vice admiral named T-Bone, but the Marines never told anyone how he ended up dead. They couldn't find that assassin anywhere. All they knew was that the family of this scumbag was living it up in luxury. Sengoku says that everything gets way harder when the civilians the Marines swore to protect stab them in the back. If you've been living under a rock and haven't heard, the Cross Guild has put a bounty on the head of every Marine soldier. But it's not just pirates who have debts, right? And that assassination happened in the kingdom of Pepe, where everyone's starving because they don't have a single penny. Now you get the genius and wickedness of that sneaky clown. The Marine soldiers now have to fight to protect the citizens, fearing they might become toast at any moment, so they need to take down this Cross Guild as quickly as possible. Hina, the hottie, arrives at the Marine HQ, and literally, everyone starts drooling over her. Helmet Head asks if she knows where Garp has gone, and she tells him the old man went on a trip to Pirate Island to save the boy Kobe. Four Eyes freaks out, and Granny Tsuru even more, when she finds out that her granddaughter went along, the one who enjoys whipping poor folks. How did they just decide to go to Hakinosu out of the blue? Got nothing better to do, so I'll just swing by this island where everyone wants to cut my throat. Why not, right? Meanwhile, back at Buggy's circus, he's meeting this dude with a face like a butt who crossed the seas to get to him. The clown says the underworld bosses are very pleased with what he did because, of course, he's the one who stabbed the vice admiral. The guy thanks him for sending money to his family, who were starving, and Buggy tells him that now the Marines will do anything to get his head, but that's better than watching his family starve. However, the clown tells him to relax because now he's going to become a pirate with the Cross Guild, and he'll be safe. Of course, the guy didn't want to become a pirate. After all, he's a good citizen, or at least he was, but it's either that or becoming mincemeat. Usopp's brother arrives shouting that the Great Cross Guild ship is finally ready. Buggy goes to check it out, all smile. He calls for Daddy Mihawk and Croco Boy, but Buggy's heart nearly jumps out of his chest when he sees the atrocity they've done. They've put Buggy's face right on the ship's prow. But, of course, those two little devils weren't happy about it, even though Buggy himself said, "Relax, I've got the best shipwright in the world." But in the end, it turned out to be this piece of junk, so Crocodile drags him to the torture chamber to teach him to stop screwing up. The clown was just a wreck, hoping they'd just end it once and for all. Crocodile says they're finally getting the recognition the Cross Guild deserve. They're making the Marines desperate, not knowing what to do, but they still need more power to strike fear across the world. But Buggy interrupts Croco Boy and shouts that they need money and power. Right, but the boss tells him to shut up if he doesn't want to be buried alive. Then, the clown forgets that he still cares about living and tells them to kill him already. He says they don't deserve to be called pirates because their goals are way too small. Hawkeye asks if he's lost his mind, but the clown says they were the ones who got rattled because as soon as Shanks started making moves, they went on the offensive. He claimed that he and Shanks were crewmates on the Pirate King ship, and he only missed the trip to Laugh Tale because he had a bad case of hemorrhoids that day. He even gave up on his big dream of becoming the next Pirate King because Shanks gave up on searching for the One Piece after Roger kicked the bucket. Young Shanks even invited him to join his crew, but, of course, the clown didn't want to be his subordinate, so he stormed off, all pissed. But now the red-haired finally got his act together and decided to go after the One Piece. Buggy tells those two devilish lackeys to show more respect because he's on the same level as Shanks. This court jester has been beaten so much his brain stopped working, as if Shanks would be dangling like a keychain right now. Then the madman goes all out and says he's going to be the Pirate King. If they need money and power, Daddy's got you covered. But Mihawk slices that ridiculous ship in half, and Crocodile tosses that big-headed clown like a bowling ball. They ask if he really thinks they'll believe his motivational speech, and even worse, if he thinks he can beat the drunken red-haired, the Black Plague, and the Rubber Monkey. But the clown says they can win with intelligence. Not to be a downer, but things aren't looking great for you, Patata. The only one-armed redhead, he might have a slim chance of defeating his kid, who's already become shark food, but he insists and says he'll show how incredible he can be. He grabs a Dendenmashi to speak to all the circus subordinates. subordinate. Crocodile stomps on his head, telling him to shut up, but then Buggy delivers a crazy speech that makes everyone dream big. He says it's time for them to go after the One Piece. I can only imagine how much he got beat up after that. On that island of transvestites that Sanji loves, there was a blabbermouth cow and a beach ball running at full speed. And in this revolutionary army, it's full of cuties. Seriously, wow. There was a ship approaching, and the talking cow wanted to know if it was friend or foe, but the cutie there told him to shut up because she'd find out. The blue mustache guy bets it's an enemy ship, and the frog-faced guy bets $1 million that it's Sabo returning home. And when the girl saw it was the honorable one returning, she turned all red. Sanji's best friends came running to tell Luffy's absentee dad that Sabo was back. Koala's jaw drops, and the two even tear up with joy, and the man has finally arrived. When a guy's a badass, it's on another level. Even Queen Elizabeth came to greet him. Everyone's celebrating like crazy, but the mustache guy says he won't pay the bet because it was rigged. But Frogface says he'll pay one way or another. Ahiru disassembles the bazooka and says she almost blew the kid up, but she's not crazy enough to shoot the man. Ivankov comes running, asking why it took him so long to return, but it's a long story. Partner, that ship was from Lulusia, the kingdom that turned to dust after Imusama snapped his fingers, and Sabo even managed to save some of the residents before they were obliterated. Koala comes in with a flying kick, asking why he didn't send her a text this whole time, but the kid couldn't because he was bugged and didn't want to reveal the hideout's location. He even sent some Morse code during the Discord call they made to say he wasn't the one who stabbed Vivi's dad. Koala threatens to kick the kid in the face but hugs him, saying she thought he had joined Vasco. And speaking of hugs, Morley pops out of the ground with those 5 tons to crush Sabo. Bello Betty goes to welcome the survivors from Lulusia who came to the island. They wanted to join the revolutionary army, but she tells them to rest first. In a little castle, Sabo meets with Ivankov and Dragon to enjoy some good liquor. Sabo says he heard about what happened to Kuma, and Dragon says he must have been programmed to return to Mariehua at any time, but they weren't in this hole just to get drunk. Actually, Sabo had something to share that even the captains couldn't know. Otherwise, their lives would be at risk. He says that the reverie was a total mess, and he's going to tell them what really happened in the holy land of Mariehua.
Today's the day we get to watch a celestial dragon take a beating. These spoiled brats who think they can do whatever they want are about to lose everything they have with this foolproof plan from the Revolutionary Army. After Sabo got back home safe and sound, he called up Luffy's absentee dad and Sanji's crush for a little chat. He said he'd spill the real tea about what went down at the reverie in the holy land of Mariehua, but of course no one else could hear it, or their lives would be on the line. Sabo starts by saying they nailed all their missions, declaring war by destroying the celestial dragon symbol, freeing as many slaves as possible, rescuing Kuma, and trashing the food depot in the land of the gods. Now the celestial dragons have fewer slaves to fetch their food, so if they keep losing like this, they might have to grab a hoe and start planting their own food. These actions encourage the citizens of 12 nations to rise up against the government, and since 8 of them succeeded, they're now called the Revolution of the 8 Nations. But one country wasn't so lucky, the Kingdom of Lulusia. After they rebelled, they were completely wiped off the face of the earth. Sabo barely escaped from there, saving a few residents in the process. But to keep anyone from knowing about the humiliation the world government suffered, they didn't report any of it in the papers. Yet, 7 of the nations that rebelled are refusing to pay taxes and send resources to the Tenryubitos. Not to mention, the Revolutionary Army is hitting the government's supply transports to make sure nothing reaches Mariehua. They might be invincible inside that massive fortress, but I bet they won't last a week without money and food. They're about to learn what it's like to live in the hood, my friend. But everyone knows the world government isn't just gonna sit around and watch while they struggle. The real war is about to start when they send the Holy Knights after the revolutionaries. And of course, at the top of their hit list is our boy Sabo, the Flame Emperor. Even though Sabo didn't actually stab King Cobra, it still turned him into a hero. Cause to the people, anyone involved with the world government is dirty and corrupt. Sabo says he's sorry about Vivi's dad, but he adds that this is just gonna fuel the flames of revolution. Ivankov slams his fist on the table and tells him to spill the tea already about what really happened to King Cobra. Everyone was trying to understand why he did it with tears in their eyes, but they wanted to believe him. Remember when the news broke, even Dragon was pissed. He said if Sabo really did send King Cobra to meet his maker, he'd personally take his head off. So Sabo starts telling what he witnessed on the day of the reverie. All the celestial dragons were running around like headless chickens because someone had invaded Mariehua. The food reserves got blown up, and the nobles were losing their minds. They might have been losing everything, but they still wouldn't let go of their slaves. The spoiled brat complains that destroying the symbol of world nobility ability wasn't enough. They also wanted to ruin their luxury food. Now they're gonna have to eat rice, beans, and bananas to learn what real hardship is. A guard shows up telling them to evacuate because it's too dangerous to stay. And this messed up, wrinkled old hag says that once this is over, they're gonna execute all the guards for letting them go through such a situation. The buck-toothed jerk was whipping an old man, yelling at him to move faster. What if something happens to him? No wonder they're all round as barrels, like Alice in Breadland or Alvin in the 1,000 Pounds. The guy can't even walk on his own. The old man couldn't take the pain and collapsed, making the Kung Fu Fatso fall flat on his face. He cursed the old man's entire bloodline and said, "Never mind, he'll walk by himself now, cause the guy's fired." Then he points his little stabbing toy at the old man's head, ready to turn him into a memory, but Karasu swoops in at the last second, snatching the weapon out of that scumbag's hand. He asks how he can have the nerve to take someone's life like that, sends a raven to bite his butt, and tells the old man to run east if he wants to survive. The Tenryubido curses out the CP for taking too long to show up and orders them to take out that bastard. The soldiers fill Karasu with bullets, turning him into Swiss cheese with all those holes. They were even shocked at how easy it was to take him down, but they fell for his genjutsu because Karasu pops up behind them, making them dance slow for the squad. Cabbage Hair already makes a run for it, knowing he's next in line. But there's no time to celebrate because the revolutionary senses the presence of two sinister Hakis, saying he can't believe they were dumb enough to attack Maria Joie. It was the blind dude Fujitora and that trash Ryokugyu. Everything was blowing up in the land of the gods, and these noble rats were running around begging for their lives, while the slaves were left behind, chained up, and pleading to be set free too. Then Lindbergh rolls up on his jetpack, pointing a gun and telling them to freeze. Of course, they were already shaking in their boots, thinking he was there to take out the slaves, but the crazy cat shoots lasers at those chains, freeing the poor souls, tells them to run to the east side of the city, and everyone runs off crying with gratitude. Lucky it wasn't Zoro in those chains. While everyone would be running east, he'd go the other way and end up face to face with the two admirals. Lucky for them because Zoro solos. Karasu tells Lindbergh to snap out of it and free the rest of the slaves because the admirals are closing in. Fujitora sensed something powerful approaching with his observation haki. The bald eagle unleashed a storm of crows on the blind dude, turning them into minced meat. Actually, he's not really blind. He's just trying to show off that he's better than Zoro by fighting with both eyes closed instead of just one. The Duke of Drumsticks was firing shots at the slaves who were seizing the chance to escape, but this guy was so cross-eyed he didn't hit a single one. All the unlucky bastards went rolling because Morley was lifting the ground like it was rubber, snapped a gun in half, and said they can't just go around shooting people like that. He told the slaves to make a run for it, and then Ryokugyu showed up, tossing tree trunks at him. The dude turned into a giant tree and asked if they knew what happens to those who defy the celestial dragons. Sprouty over here thought he was Luffy, stretching his arm out to smack Morley. But Morley, who calls himself a lumberjack, yanked that branch right out. The celestial dragons almost got squashed, and Big Lips was like, "Man, they sure get pissed off easily." The Amazon rainforest guy asks why they're wrecking the city and where their leader is. But Morley calls him a perv and says he doesn't talk to people who walk around buck naked. I mean, it's kinda hard to imagine a tree wearing a sweater. Then Morley's like, "Why you staring at me, Treebeard? You got a crush or something?" But the Admiral gets all worked up and hits him with a, "Back off, bro. This is a sword fight." He shoves Morley into some buildings, and one of those rotten celestials screams that if any of them get hurt, Ryokugyu's gonna be sentenced to death. Meanwhile, Fujitora's having a hard time taking a dump and uses his power to send everything crashing down. Christmas Tree Guy asks what the hell he's doing, and the blind dude says he's about to summon a meteor. He must have lost his mind. The CP9 agents were just lurking around saying if this weren't the land of the gods, those admirals would have already obliterated the place. But the fight was so intense there wasn't much room for them to jump in. These are the losers who got stuck in CP9 and couldn't make it up to CP0 like Rob Lucci and Kaku. Khalifa says it's time to dip while the revolutionaries were fighting tooth and nail. Over at a Denden Mushi, someone's asking Sabo if he found the collar keys yet, but he says it won't take long cause he knows where they are. He tells Lindbergh that Kuma made it to the Pangaea castle cause he saw St. Roswald and his son Charlos riding on him like he's some sort of horse. They wanted to finish what they tried in the meeting square, when they tried to kidnap little Shirahoshi, but by some miracle another celestial dragon smacked that disgusting brat to knock some sense into him. But this time, they're gonna adopt her with Kuma's power. They're going after Princess Shirahoshi again, but of course, Sabo's not gonna let that happen. He says he's gonna save Kuma at all costs. Meanwhile, sprinting through the corridors, who else but Bonnie shows up. Of course, she's also there to rescue her Papa Kuma. Princess Vivi was trying to sneak out, but Rob Lucci asks where she thinks she's going all by herself. He tells her to head back to her quarters, but Vivi tells him to leave her alone. She's gonna ask Vice Admiral Garp for help. The little tiger says he'll protect her himself, but she claps back, reminding him they didn't do squat to protect Shirahoshi before. She knows those bastards are gonna go after the mermaid again. Back at the palace, the great Nefertari Cobra was rolling in, accompanied by Chaka and Pell, in his wheelchair. This guy's ready for the Hot Wheels race, but first, he's heading straight for a meeting with the 5 elders. This was a golden opportunity. When they got there, the soldiers said only King Cobra could attend the audience with the 5 elders. Of course, his bodyguards didn't want to leave him because he's so old he can't even wipe his own butt anymore. But the king orders them to stand down because he needs to go. He says not to worry, he won't be long, and he asks them to take care of Vivi in the meantime, since he loves to stir things up every now and then. The episode starts with the royal guards getting completely wrecked by Sabo. The guy snagged the keys to the collars and was freeing the slaves. These scumbags tried to land a hit, but Sabo's reflexes were on point. He used his flames to humiliate these royal lapdogs even more. He knocked their heads together and was about to stroll out, keys in hand, when someone slammed the door open, asking if he was Sabo. It was Bonnie, the little firecracker, saying they had the same goal, rescuing her Papa Kuma. So, they sprinted through the castle, and Bonnie told Sabo she trusted the Revolutionary Army. She begged Sabo to save Kuma, and of course, that's exactly why they came. Sabo summoned Karasu's crow and sent the keys with it, telling him to let Morley know they needed to head straight to the hideout after freeing the slaves. Sabo then asked Bonnie what she planned to do after getting out of there. She said she was heading to Egghead. She needed to ask Vegapunk to restore her father's consciousness. Sabo was shocked, asking if there was really a way to do that, but Bonnie said that if there wasn't, she'd make the old man invent one. Sabo noticed the guards closing in, so he scooped Bonnie up in his arms, jumped, and vanished from their radar. Bonnie got all shy, thanking him for saving her. Imagine if Sabo had just ditched Bonnie and left her to handle things on her own. Not that it'd be a problem for her, those weak soldiers wouldn't even touch her before turning into a bunch of babies. They were complaining about the lack of guards at the tower. One mentioned something about the old guards seeing the lost chamber, but that sent everyone into a panic, telling him not to even joke about it. It's like in Harry Potter when they wouldn't say Voldemort's name. Sabo and Bonnie were parting ways since they had different directions to go. She found it odd that a revolutionary was being so nice to a pirate, but Sabo pointed out that they both wanted to save the same person. That left her without any argument. Funny how women always try to find something to argue about, right? It's like there's this instinct saying, I need to be annoying. Sabo started thinking about that lost chamber and rushed to meet up with the rest of the revolutionaries. Meanwhile, at the palace, King Cobra was entering alone for his meeting with the 5 elders. All he had was a wheelchair and a ton of guts to face those monsters. He wheeled his way in until he saw a bunch of swords in front of an empty throne. Wheeled in, not walked. Now I gotta ask, what do you say for someone in a wheelchair? Are they walking, rolling, or driving? Let me know in the comments what you think. Cobra was stunned seeing that throne, and the 5 old men arrived looking like Yakuza bosses who could make anyone tremble. They asked the king of Alabasta what he wanted to know, and the bearded one didn't even know where to start. He mentioned that 800 years ago, the world government was founded by 20 monarchs. These monarchs brought their families to Marie-Joie and became known as the Celestial Dragons. Among these 20, everything was peaceful and harmonious. To make sure no one would try to dominate, they created an empty throne. They placed their swords around it to swear that none of them would ever sit on it. Meanwhile, the 20 nations that lost their royal families received new monarchs to keep things in order. The original royal families had their names removed from history, but Queen Lily of the Nefertari family remained among the original 20. Even so, she didn't become a celestial dragon and had to return to Alabasta. Cobra had read some old letters from the kingdom with info from after the Void Century, but Queen Lily's name was missing, and she never returned to Alabasta either. So the little king asks them what they know about it. Why did she disappear along with the Void Century? Jay Garcia says she really didn't live in the palace, but for all they know, she went back to Alabasta. They can't know what happened since it's been over 800 years. Then it cuts to the mysterious Imu Narona in his fancy garden. But the old man wasn't satisfied with that answer, so he decided to go all in. Dude clearly didn't have much love for his life. He straight up asked the Gorosei what the D means. Baldy asks why he wants to know, and the king says Queen Lily left a letter 800 years ago that's been passed down through the royal family, and obviously Imusama's little lapdogs didn't like that one bit. Meanwhile, in Pangaea Castle, you could hear a scream in the distance. It was Princess Shirahoshi who was being kidnapped by Kuma. Of course, he was just following the orders of those filthy celestials, but the girl was begging him to let go because it was hurting. That slimy bastard starts celebrating that he finally did it. He never gave up and caught himself a giant mermaid. He was already thinking about what she eats and saying he'd ride her around the city every single day. The nobles just stood there watching, because even being rich doesn't make you bulletproof, and everyone knows challenging those guys is a one-way ticket it to the afterlife. But even so, the princess refused to serve him, and the slimy jerk made a sour face. She begged for help, but all the nobles ran off. Saint Charlos says she's rebelling. Meanwhile, Fukaboshi and his two brothers were mowing down those filthy nobles. One of the scumbags warns them that if they attack, their country will be destroyed. Shirahoshi was over the moon that her brothers came to save her. Fukaboshi said they were heading home and never coming back here, but that vile Celestial says they should leave for real because now that mermaid was his pet. The three brothers were absolutely furious and didn't care. They were ready to beat that dude into the ground. But before they could even get close, Kuma fired off a massive bazooka shot that sent everyone flying, even the other nobles nearby. Out of nowhere, Rebecca and Leo showed up saying they were going to help her. The girl was fired up, and Sai was there too, asking Celestial Dragon Myosgard if he could beat Charlos into a pulp. And this must be one of the only decent Tenryubaito because he hit them with a go ahead and smash that scumbag. I'll take responsibility. Charlos tells Kuma to wipe out those three because even royalty can't challenge him, let alone those fishmen. Fukaboshi was fuming, but Myosgard told him to calm down because he's royalty, and to let those two handle it. Since they're pirates and don't represent any country, they can get away with it. That slimy jerk says Myosgard was bold to hit him that one time. Then he orders Kuma to exterminate him too. This guy is 100% relying on Kuma, man. No joke. But now it's time for this demon to pay for all his sins, because Sai and Leo are speeding in like a couple of madmen while the nobles freak out. They hit him with a crazy kick that smashed that piece of trash into the ground. Dude got squashed like a spring and died right on the spot. And that's exactly what I wanted to see. These bastards getting what they really deserve. But now things are about to get complicated because the Marine Admirals are coming. Kuma's already gearing up for another bazooka blast to blow those two away, but Morley popped up from the ground, giving him a big hug, telling him he doesn't need to follow anyone's orders anymore. Everyone was standing there, jaws on the floor, staring at that giant, while Karasu showed up with the keys to the collars. Then Morley dragged Kuma back down underground with him. St. Roswald was crying over his son, and no one could even believe all this madness. But now we gotta find out what happened to King Cobra after asking that bold question. So, standing before the five elders, the old man asks once again, what is the D? But they tell him to leave because they have nothing to say. Then they hear footsteps, and all five of the elders turn, totally freaked out, because that was none other than the supreme ruler of the entire world. Jupiter says that King Cobra is still there, and Imusama shouldn't be revealing himself in front of him like this. And the old man nearly craps himself when he sees someone so powerful that even the elders are scared. Then Imu Narona with those red eyes starts walking past the swords stuck in the ground. He approaches the grand empty throne, the one no one should ever sit on, and everyone's in utter disbelief. Imu stares down King Cobra and says Queen Lily's name before sitting on the forbidden throne. King Cobra was sweating bullets, saying no one was supposed to sit on that throne, and the old guys weren't playing around, giving serious looks while standing in front of the big boss. Then the great Imu-sama speaks up, saying there are two things he'd like to tell the bearded one, and one thing he'd like to ask. But King Cobra cuts him off, asking who the hell he is. He mentions he's heard of an Imu among the first 20 monarchs, but the ruler just tells him to mind his own business because he's not answering that. But he will answer the first question Cobra asked, about who the DR Imu says that D is the name of the people who turned against them. And lately, a bunch of them have been popping up, causing trouble. Most of them don't even know what their own name means. And all of them are a result of Queen Lily's failure 800 years ago. Broomhead says that both the Ohara scholars and the pirates searching for the poneglyphs and treasure only exist because of Queen Lily's mistake. If it weren't for her, those cursed poneglyphs wouldn't have spread all over the world. You can tell Broomhead's not a big fan of those stone tablets, right? But do you think the great Imusama can read the poneglyphs like Robin and Odin? Let me know in the comments. In the middle of his speech, Imu's cronies reach into their jackets to pull something out, and Imu wonders whether the poneglyphs were scattered by accident or if it was all planned. Then all the goons pull out their hole-punching toys, except for Baldinus Juro, who drew a sword, because bald dudes are usually the rebellious ones. Cobra's face says it all. I'm screwed! And Imu Narona tells him the answer to his question is written in the letter Lily sent to Alabasta. Then he asks why Cobra still calls her Queen Lily of the Nefertari clan. He orders Cobra to call her by the full name she signed on that letter, and by this point the old man is completely terrified. King Cobra was absolutely certain he wasn't walking out of that room alive. He asked if he had any chance of surviving by lying, but Egghead straight up told him his fate was sealed the moment he laid eyes on the great Imu. All those bastards pointed their pistols, and the sword, and Cobra's heart was pounding harder than the punch Luffy gave his daughter. But guess who was eavesdropping on the whole conversation? Of course, it was him, Sabo, the man. Sabo knew something smelled fishy. Then Cobra revealed how the letter was signed. The queen who ruled Alabasta 800 years ago was Nefertari D. Lily. Immediately, Imu's eyes bulged and he shot a shadowy arrow straight at Cobra's back. Just then, surrounded by flames, Sabo made a fiery entrance, unleashing a savage Heiken Weiss on all 5 elders at once. He charged straight at Imu-sama, who asked where that rat had come from before transforming into a monster to devour the attack. And he wasn't the only one looking like he'd been possessed by the devil. The 5 Gorosei also awakened, reaching their most powerful forms. There was no way they could let Sabo escape alive now. If he ran off with what he just heard, they were all doomed. Sabo declared that his plan was to take down all of them, but he hadn't expected to find someone at the top of the world. Meanwhile, Adenden Mushi snapped a pic of Sabo, and that's how they spread the fake news that he killed King Cobra and sent him straight to Vasco. Sabo fired up another flame attack on the Gorosei, and Cobra, in his final moments, asked if Sabo and Luffy were brothers and why a revolutionary was helping him. Sabo responded that his only enemies were those sitting above the kings, those who don't dance slow for the homies. He asked if Cobra knew Luffy, and the old man said Luffy saved his life. Now it was Sabo's turn to return the favor, telling Cobra to hang in there because he was going to get them out of there. But the mere presence of Imu almost made Sabo lose his cool. All those monsters started chasing the two of them, and Cobra told Sabo he'd only make it out alive if he went alone. But Sabo wasn't having it. He swore he'd save Cobra. Then the old man revealed something shocking. There was something Sabo needed to tell Luffy and Vivi. They also carry the name D! Sabo was absolutely stunned. The big question is, why the heck did that old man go ask the 5 elders who the D are in person when he already knew he was one from Lily's letter? Sure, he didn't know the D were enemies of the government, but the guy just threw his life away. Not that he had much time left anyway. After this, Sabo recalls when they were kids and asked Ace if it was just a coincidence. But before he could finish, Luffy started yelling about how hungry he was and stuffed 2 steaks in his mouth. Sabo figured it wasn't a coincidence that Luffy and Ace both had D in their names. Monkey D. Luffy and Portgas D. Ace. But the future Donut Ace didn't care about the name. He even asked if Sabo wanted a D in his name too. Luffy, using all his brain power, started calling him Say D. Bo, no shame, right in the middle of his name. Meanwhile, Cobra said he now understood the path Alabasta had to follow, but it wouldn't matter if the 2 of them died there. Imu fired another shadow arrow and Sabo yelled, "Keep that thing away from me!" But the shot curved right into his heart, knocking both him and Cobra to the ground like a sack of bricks. Barely able to stand and losing tons of blood, Sabo saw Imu approaching with bloodlust in his eyes. Cobra, barely hanging on, said, "The poneglyphs carried the flag of dawn, signed Nefertari D. Lily." And what does that even mean? I have no clue, man. I'm not Sherlock Holmes. What? You think this is some Scooby-Doo squad unraveling mysteries? That old man's shady. Cobra trusted Sabo and stood there with arms wide open in front of Imu-sama, leaving Sabo no choice but to bail. The only things left in that room were the old man's Hot Wheels and Sabo's baton, because Cobra was the latest player for Vasco, and the Gorosei had blood in their eyes. One of them went in for a closer sniff, but someone else had seen it all. It was Wapol, trembling like a leaf with Parkinson's, and the elder asked who was there. Puffy Wapol bolted out of there saying, "They sent King Cobra to the great beyond." He even added that, despite not liking him, it'd be too cruel to celebrate. Wapol sprinted faster than Usain Bolt, like his life depended on it. Well, it actually did. Now he knew the world government's dirty little secret and was freaking out, wondering who that crazy guy was. He rolled down the stairs, smashing into a wall. The guards nearly ran him through with their swords, and he screamed that he hadn't seen anything. The knights mentioned the council had already started in the round table room, but Wapol wanted nothing to do with that place. He ran off like a maniac. Back at the council room, Abe Lincoln said King Cobra and King Wapol hadn't shown up yet. "If I were you, I wouldn't wait for them to show up to start. Otherwise, you'll be waiting till Palmeiras wins a World Cup." The other kings were networking. Meatball Man was busting out some dance moves and inviting Shirahoshi to join. Fukaboshi told her the council must be almost over and suggested they head to the Red Port, where no one would bother her. Little did he know, the drama had only just begun. But Shirahoshi wanted to talk to Princess Vivi before leaving. Where could she be? Well, turns out Vivi was tied to a chair, demanding to know what the heck was going on. She ordered them to untie her because she was about to cancel them on Twitter. Be careful though, the fine for using a VPN is 50,000 now. And Jabra, being a jerk, said now he definitely wouldn't untie her. The whole CP0 squad was guarding her. Khalifa, looking sharp, told her that unfortunately for her, this wasn't a fairy tale, and no one was coming to save her. She was going to be reported as missing and would end up as someone's pet. Kumadori and that horned guy, Blueno, were playing a round of cards to pass the time. Even old Crockmouth was there. Vivi asked if Shirahoshi was okay, and Wolfman told her she shouldn't be worrying about someone else right now. He did mention that there had been another incident earlier, but it seemed like Shirahoshi was alright, and the the guys who beat up the celestial dragon that tried to kidnap her? They were yelling everywhere that they were Straw Hat Luffy's subordinates. That was a wild ride in the land of the gods, something you don't see every day. Fujitora actually helped the revolutionaries free the slaves, and Ryokugyu? Oh, he was pissed. The two admirals threw hands for a solid 5 minutes. No hard feelings after, of course. Tree Man Ryokugyu asked Fujitora if the blind man realized the mess he just made, and Fujitora? Dude was chill, saying he already told everyone he's gonna destroy the system. Forest Boy wasn't having it, asking if Fujitora forgot they're in the Marines. But Fujitora brushed it off like it's no big deal. So Ryokugyu went all Amazon rainforest mode, turning into a giant tree ready to pound the blind admiral. Meanwhile, Jabra couldn't believe what he was seeing, saying this whole mess was nuts. Khalifa, still her usual cold self, told Vivi she had nothing to do with it, but if she didn't act fast, she'd end up as somebody's pet. Suddenly chaos broke out with people shouting all over the place. Guess who it was? Wapol, the munching machine, literally eating his way through the walls. If he had any chance of sneaking past the Gorosei, it was gone. Now, as he ran through the castle yelling that he didn't see anything and knew nothing, he told everyone to get out of his way because he didn't want to get locked up. Like, bro, you really think the only thing waiting for you after watching King Cobra get toasted is a jail time? The agents watched the destruction caused by that lunatic, but when they turned around, Vivi was gone! And where was she hiding? Right inside. Wapol's a big ol' mouth. Girl had no choice. She thanked him and asked why he was in such a rush, but he was like, trust me, you don't and want to know. Of all the people, Vivi is the last person who'd want to know. Oh yeah, by the way, I just saw your dad turn into a shish kebab, thanks to a bunch of soulless demons. Then Wapol's wife popped up, asking a royal guard where her hubby was. They hadn't seen him until now, and when she did, she saw him screaming, crying, and freaking out. She rushed over all cute, but almost had a heart attack when she saw Vivi in his mouth and asked, "Who's this wench?" Vivi asked where he was headed, and Wapol said he was going as far away as he could, to the ends of the world where no one would ever find him. Vivi begged him to take her with him, and his wife almost fainted, asking if they were gonna get married. The episode kicks off by saying that even though King Cobra's murder was kept on the down low, chaos was inevitable. Our boy Sabo was hanging on by a thread, playing hide and seek like Hansel and Gretel, except instead of breadcrumbs, he was leaving a trail of blood through the forest. Gotta make sure he doesn't lose his way back, right? The royal guards, not dumb at all, started following the trail, thinking he couldn't be far off, but they got juked like they were playing against Ronaldinho, and Sabo managed to shake them off. He remembers King Cobra turning into Pac-Man food and vows to deliver the message to Luffy and Vivi, the one where they learn they're also part of the D-Clan. As Sabo's trying to make his getaway, the bushes start rustling. He grips his weapon, ready to defend himself, but it's just a rabbit trying to give the dude a heart attack. But Bugs Bunny wasn't the only one lurking, because an actual soldier pops up, trying to catch Sabo from behind. We see some blood splattering, and the big question is, was it Sabo who took the hit, or did he use his epic karate skills to counter the guard? Like, come on, he just escaped 5 Gorosei and an Imu Neurona. It'd be a joke if he went down to a random guard. Meanwhile, back at the palace, Chaka and Pell rush in, and Mr. Cinnamon Roll Hair asks if they found King Cobra. But nope, he hadn't come back from his meeting with the Gorosei, and there wasn't a single sign of Vivi either. So Chaka decides to take another look around the castle while Pell searches from the skies. Our dog Chaka rolls up on some guards who didn't want to let him into the meeting room. He's like, King Cobra's sick, he can't be left alone for too long. Igaram came out with these 2 huge posters of Vivi, asking if anyone's seen her, but nope, no one had any clue where the princess was. Then, in some government elevator, a gentleman offered to escort Count Dracula and Princess Buttface to the port. If we had any doubt about who won that fight, well, here's your answer. Sabo gave that fool a good beating and stole his armor to sneak into the ranks of the royal guards. Down at the port, Wapol was hiding among the crates. Vivi popped out of his mouth like it was just another normal day. Can you even imagine the stench in there? They were almost caught by a marine soldier who heard a noise and was ready to show off his stabby toy. But luck was on royalty's side because a little cat appeared just in time to save their hides. Vivi told Wapol to be more careful, and he snapped back, saying he didn't ask her to tag along, but she shut his big mouth up because the loudmouth was speaking way too loudly. They took advantage of the distracted baggage handlers and slipped into the royal family's crates. Sabo safely brought the king and the princess to the port, and the Marines were like, "Don't worry, we got it from here." Hit him with a, "You're fired," and Sabo started thinking about how to make his own escape. Then he noticed a ship about to set sail, and you could see that sly grin on his face. Vivi managed to hide among the luggage, and the two of them infiltrated the ship like a hot knife through butter. The princess said she needed to tell the world what went down in the reverie, but Wapol got all worked up, saying if she did that, the government would blow her brains out. The beach ball was about to turn her over to the Marines, but that would have been dumb as hell cause he'd be caught too. And after witnessing the dark side of the government, he knew he was condemned forever. Then he remembered an ace up his sleeve that he was sure would work. He pulled out a communication dendenmushi, and Vivi's jaw hit the floor. She asked to borrow it, but stingy Wapol said no way, claiming she'd use up all his credit. So he called Big News Morgans. Morgans asked how the reverie went, but Wapol said that wasn't important. The parrot already noticed Wapol was shaking in fear and told him to spill the beans. But Wapol couldn't say anything over the dendenmushi, or else he'd lose his head. So he asked Morgans to give him shelter in exchange for his story. And do you think that shady journalist would turn down an offer like that? That guy lives for chaos. He asked where they were heading now, and Vivi replied that they were headed to the kingdom of Egghead. So Big News Morgans was going to approach the ship, pretending to do some research, while the two of them sneak onto his flying vessel. Honestly, you can't even call that thing a ship, right? Morgans was hyped to hear the gossip because if even a king's life was in danger, the story had to be insane. On the ship, Vivi asked what exactly he had seen, but Wapol was like, "You're the last person I'd want to tell." He told her to go back to her people in Alabasta, but the princess replied that it was CP0 who captured her. Even if she returned to her people, they'd just take her away again. Then she begged to use the dendenmushi phone again because she had to call her dad Cobra. She thought he must be super worried by now. Of course, Wapol freaked out, telling her that's the last thing she should do right now. Back at the reverie, CP0 agents were also showing Vivi's photo to everyone. The celebrity life sure is rough, huh? Bonnie was playing spy while the other slackers were hunting for Sabo. The girl was starving because it had been about 4 hours since she last had a slice of pizza. And just like everyone else, she had snuck onto a ship to escape. Meanwhile, Sabo, barely hanging on, had hidden away on the ship bound for Lulusia. He was only thinking about how to meet up with Luffy and Vivi to deliver King Cobra's message. Since walls have ears, it didn't take long for the news of King Cobra's assassination and Princess Vivi's disappearance to spread across the world. Back in the holy land of Mariajois, the five elders were sipping tea and chatting. They mentioned how Sabo had a strange fate because he was always surrounded by people with the name D. Then the dendenmushi rang, and even its eyes were creepy. Imu-sama spoke, saying they wanted to use the mother flame that Vegapunk had invented. The old geezers were also excited to see the power of that little toy. Nusjuro's bald head suggested they should test it on an empty forest instead of the sea, but Imu made it clear they wanted to use it on the kingdom of Lulusia. Egghead mentioned that many people live there, but Imu didn't give a damn. And of course, Imu's lapdogs agreed in an instant, because here, if you don't obey, you're just a memory, my friend. Jupiter asks why Imu chose Lulusia, and Imu says it was the closest. This guy must have been a beast on exams, and because he nailed the exact country where the person they most wanted to eliminate was heading. Must have aced a ton of tests. They took advantage of the fact that there were people trying to rebel in Lulusia and use them as an example. Go ahead, rebel against the world government and see if I don't wipe your country off the map. Imu says there's one more request. He also wanted Vivi captured. Could the theory be true that Imu-sama is in Queen Lily's body? And now she's looking for her successor after 800 years. At Marine HQ, a soldier was reporting to boss Akainu. He said there were revolts in both the kingdom of Tajin and the kingdom of Aegis. So that jerk just said to crush each one of them. This guy might as well join the Gorosei cause he's got the same mindset. And these guys really chose the worst ships to sneak onto, huh? Bonnie ended up on King Tajin's ship, Vivi and Wapol on the Aegis ship, and Sabo, of course, chose the worst one, Lulusia's. It's like they're magnets for trouble. The Marines were working at full speed, and Akainu decided to go all out. He called for the Seraphims to handle the situation, but these brats were totally different from the ones at Egghead. This time, there was a Seraphim of the best villain in anime, aka Doflamingo, Gecko Moria's Seraphim, and even crocodiles. Speaking of the devil, our buddy Croc was just making an appearance on an island. The Marines filled him with bullets, but of course, that wasn't gonna work. These Marines are so out of the loop. All Crocodile had to do was spit on the bullets or sprinkle a little water, and the guy would be a joke. But since that wasn't the case, he just whipped up a sandstorm and crushed that whole troop. Back to the present on Rosie Island, Sabo explains that when they arrived in Lulusia, the Vampire King and the butt-faced princess were captured by their own people. Sabo was a complete nobody, but they welcomed him like family. That's when he read the newspaper for the first time and discovered he had been framed for the king's assassination. And that explains why the people of Lulusia saw him as a hero. They hated their kings. He wanted to tell the truth but stayed quiet because he felt their thirst for revolution. Bello Betty even gave a speech, calling them all trash and asking if they were going to fight or hide like a bunch of cowards. And those who chose to fight joined Saibo in signing up for the Revolutionary Army. He said he couldn't get a secure Dendenmushi, so he couldn't talk to them, but he managed to make a disguised call to warn them he wasn't the one who stabbed King Cobra. During that call, the government intercepted it and thought he was still in Lulusia, but by that time he was already at sea with the new recruits for the army. So an entire kingdom was annihilated, devastated, and obliterated because of one little phone call. Sabo says all the Marines went into panic mode because many of them had left their families in that kingdom. They watched their homeland explode right before their eyes. Dragon asks how it all went down, and Sabo says a huge shadow covered the sky, and in the blink of an eye, everything started to be destroyed. But it was impossible for that to have been natural. There was something incredibly dark flying in the clouds. That's when Ivankov starts talking about Emu. It might just be a coincidence, but among the first 20 monarchs who created this world 800 years ago, there was a king named Saint Emu of the Nerona dynasty. Sabo wasn't following any of this. They knew that in this world there was an ability that could make someone immortal, and if that exists, it's proof that there's someone out there who's never died. So that person could very well be Emu. Sure, it might just be a coincidence that they share the same name as an ancient monarch, but who else would the five elders bow to? They're supposed to be the highest authority among the celestial dragons. Ivankov was still on a roll, saying that if that thing that destroyed the country is a government weapon, it could only be Vegapunk's creation. But Dragon says the old man wouldn't create something so destructive. But what if it's an ancient weapon? If Emu is some sort of ancient being, he could easily bring some toys from the past with him. Dragon says that Robin confirmed the existence of these weapons. But if they really have these weapons, why haven't they used them until now? But if you think things are already intense, you haven't seen what went down in Mariajoie yet. A celestial dragon had just been executed, but the world will never know about it. The other celestial dragons said he got what he deserved. They blamed him for why the inferior beings are daring to stand up to royalty. The man who executed him was the champion of an island called God Valley, the supreme commander of the Holy Knights, Garling Figurland, also known to his inner circle as Shanks's father, and the man who was executed, none other than the one who defended the Fishman, the only celestial dragon who wasn't trash, Saint Don Quixote Mioscar. The episode ends with Garling saying that those who defend worms are worse than the worms themselves. Man, what was that episode? Garp sent the dude flying into space, sacrificed himself to save the boy Kobe, and even threw hands with Aokiji to show who's boss. But the ending of this episode was on another level. The episode kicks off on an island full of abandoned ships. Somebody was making a massive noise and everything was shaking. It almost felt like Lizzo was strolling around freely, but in reality, there were two crazy dudes smashing the ships to pieces. One of them was about to lose a hand, but kept throwing punches non-stop. Fast forward to today, two Marines showed up to check out the wreckage and were completely stunned. It was Full Body and Django. Yep, the same Django who used to roll with the Black Cat Pirates and got his butt kicked alongside Kuro by the Straw Hats. Anyway, back to what matters, they asked if these ships got hit in some crazy war to get that destroyed, but Commodore Branu shows up saying that's not the case at all. These ships were used as punching bags. They wanted to know who the maniac was that beat the crap out of these ships, and the boss says it was none other than Vice Admiral Garp in his younger days, and he still does it every day to this day. They asked why there were two wrecked ships, and he explains the other one was from Garp's disciple, none other than former Admiral Aokiji. The two used to smash those ships like there was no tomorrow, but there was one rule that should never be broken. They couldn't use hockey or any devil fruit powers to fight. It had to be pure fists and guts, and even without using any abilities, those ships ended up completely wrecked. This just goes to show that these monsters weren't born with all that strength. They trained harder than anyone to become this powerful. Over at Hachinosu, the giant Sunjuan wolf had just woken up. The dude got up, and the Sword Marines started shaking in their boots. They knew one step from him would crush half the island. Garp shot off like a rocket, and Thais Carla said she's about to squash these worms who interrupted her beauty sleep. But the grandpa comes crashing down like a meteor and smashes that guy's forehead, leaving a massive bump. Everyone, and I mean everyone, was left with their jaws on the floor, because Garp just threw that 100-ton Godzilla straight into the ocean like it was nothing. He landed Avengers style, and all those punks started panicking. Now you get the power behind all that training, right? Garp spent his entire life smashing warships, and now he's face to face with Sanjuan Wolf, aka the Colossal Battleship. Though it's looking more like Wolf ran into Grandpa Garp's fist instead. Blackbeard's crew was screaming for a rescue before Wolf drowned, but how do you even pull this giant Donkey Kong out of the water? Kobe and the others were in awe of the legendary hero's strength, but being humble as always, Garp says he's just warming up. Except now the island's crawling with ticking time bombs, and this time the drunkard has shown up. Vasco Shot asks how they dare mess with his island. Who's gonna pay for the damages? And he downs another 950 milliliters of booze. In a race at 300 kilometers per hour, who do you think drinks more, Vasco Shot or Zoro? But this nosy dude even weaponized his booze. He spat out all his sake and unleashed a drunken fire breath, but Garp's too slick, using two pirates as shields. He said, "Swallow this fireball right here." Then he started tossing the flaming bodies at those fools like he was playing dodgeball. Pizarro was losing it because it was getting way too hot. The old man had basically turned the island into a living hell. One of the goons muttered that if Teach found out what a mess the city was in, they were all done for. "Y'all should worry about getting out of there alive first, my guy." Vasco da Gama was cracking up, and Garp didn't care one bit that they were outnumbered. But then the Den Den Mushi rang, and Kujaku's sweet voice came through, saying they had already rescued the island's slaves and the injured soldiers. Tashigi was taking care of Hibari, who was shivering like crazy, literally, because Aokiji almost turned her into a popsicle. She let Garp know they were ready to set sail, and he said it was time to dip. But everyone seemed way too pumped up to stop beating on those filthy pirates. And of course, the pirates weren't about to let the Marines leave that easily. Garp's apprentice showed up again, saying they couldn't let them get away. Helmeppo was about to crap himself, and the Zoro from Wish wanted to know if he was also the future of the Marines, like Kobe. Garp asked Kuzan if he still wanted to fight, and Kobe warned him to be careful of Blackbeard's officers. Then the old man said their only goal now was to reach the sea. They couldn't afford to die here, but it was gonna be a 4 versus 400 battle. Kobe saw a girl being chased and said they forgot to rescue a hostage. He rushed over to help, but Prince ordered him to stop, saying it was a trap. The girl and her goons gave Kobe that psycho look, cause he fell for it like a chump. Garp noticed Shiryu sneaking up invisible, ready to stab Kobe from behind. So he stepped in to stop the kid from becoming a kebab. The sword pierced right through the old man, and Kobe was freaking out. Shiryu shoved the blade deeper, but Garp grabbed him by the neck and slammed his head into the ground like an ostrich. Kobe didn't even realize Shiryu was invisible, and Grandpa Garp called that bastard a petty impel-down thug. Garp pulled the sword out of his stomach, and the pirates started celebrating because Shiryu had managed to stab the legendary hero. The other two rushed in to help, but Garp brushed it off, telling them to get back to the ship. Kobe started crying, blaming himself for Garp having to step in to protect him, but Garp told him not to be so arrogant, because Kobe wasn't the real target. Shiryu got back up, saying that stubborn old man was tough as nails, but Garp was already beaten up, and those pirates were grinning like idiots, saying that in his condition they could finally take him down. Then 300 goons came charging in, gunning for Garp's head, trying to cash in big time. He had a bounty of 3 crowns, just like the admiral's, meaning he was worth 3 billion. Aokiji walked in, freezing the ground beneath him. He shot toward Garp, telling those dimwits to get out of the way. He froze his own allies and said that even if Garp was bound hand and foot, they'd still stand no chance against him. Then Grandpa Garp unleashed a wicked conqueror's haki, while Aokiji charged up a monstrous ice glove. They faced off, just like in the anime opening, and Garp remembered the day Kuzan asked to become his apprentice. The Vice Admiral had refused, telling Kuzan to learn from the Marine instructors, but Kuzan replied that he'd already learned everything they had to offer. Now he wanted to learn how to truly become strong. But Garp told him to get lost and went back to training. So Kuzan started punching a ship, but it hurt like hell. Garp told him not to use haki or it wouldn't be real training, but it was all good because the kid didn't even know how to use haki yet. He kept punching, saying he'd get there, and Garp gave him a big grin. They spent entire days training, punching, and beating the crap out of that poor ship. After the Ohara incident, Aokiji asked what the Marines considered justice, while Garp was fuming because his son had become a revolutionary. Now, these two monsters were facing off. One day, Garp had shown up yelling at Kuzan because his grandson had turned into a pirate. He said he wouldn't allow it, and Aokiji asked what that had to do with him. Garp called him to eat, but the Ice King said he was a busy admiral, but Garp shrugged and said, "No worries, I'll authorize it." Back to the present, Aokiji said he had trained a worthy enemy, and Garp told him he was expelled from being his pupil. They punched each other so hard that even Pizarro was impressed. Both were blown back, along with everything else on the island. Kobe rushed to Garp, and both were down for the count. The goons came back, and Sword was ready to defend Garp, but the skull-faced guy started laughing, saying there was no way they'd escape. This was Hachinosu, and the more they stirred the hive, the more pirates would show up. It was like some sort of accelerated pregnancy process. Back on the ship, Hibari finally woke up. And Papa Oda blessed us with 3 beautiful ladies all at once, my ex, my current, and my mistress. She asked where Kobe was and apologized for causing so much trouble, but Kujaku said he'd be back soon and was happy she was okay. Pizarro asked if they really thought their ship was safe at the port and told them not to underestimate the power of his devil fruit. The whole island started shaking and the ground began to rise. An enormous fist appeared and pirates were falling into a massive pit. The skull-faced guy had prepared a gigantic punch. Everyone on the ship was freaking out, seeing that massive thing from afar. Pizarro says that the newspapers only feature news about Blackbeard, but they also want to become famous. He went on smashing everything, even his own allies, just for fun, and he says that tomorrow's headline will be like this: an elite unit led by the famous Vice Admiral Garp tried to rescue Kobe, the hero of the Marines, but the captain of the 4th ship of Blackbeard's pirates, Avalo Pizarro, with his fearsome power, tragically annihilated them on the pirate island, and he went full rage mode to crush that Marine ship like a mosquito. Kobe tells him not to do it because everyone is on board. There are even civilians on the ship. But Garp tells him not to lose his mind because justice will always prevail. The episode begins a few weeks ago at Amazon Lily. Several soldiers had been captured and were being taken away by Blackbeard, who was laughing like crazy, saying he didn't expect the old man Rayleigh to show up. But even though they couldn't take Boa Hancock, they still got quite the prize, and not even the Vice Admiral of this battalion could help. They were going to have to abandon their men because they didn't have the government's permission to attack an Emperor of the Seas, and Kobe was desperate, trying to find a solution to save these guys. Imagine watching almost all your friends being taken away and not being able to do anything just because the enemy is a Yonko. But even so, Kobe started walking towards the bum. If he wanted, he could even confront him. Since he's from Sword, he doesn't have to obey anyone's orders, but it wouldn't be too smart to fight this devil-bearded guy alone. Blackbeard asks if he wants his friends back, says he doesn't mind going to war with them, but Kobe says they're trying to take 800 Marines and a warship. He asks if they'd rather take him instead of the soldiers. Teach bursts out laughing, saying Kobe thinks too highly of himself, but you can't deny that he had a point. The life of a Marine hero is definitely worth more than 800 weaklings in white uniforms. Then we see the first lesson Kobe had with Garp when he joined the Marines. The old man says an old person and a baby are on an island full of wild beasts, but he can only go alone and take one of them on the boat. So he asks Kobe what he'd do, but the bowl-cut kid was desperate, trying to find a solution to save both. But if he takes too long, they'll all become tiger food. Then the kid has the brilliant idea of getting off the boat to put the old man and the baby on it. That way, only he would go down. But Garp smacks him, saying that's totally wrong, and Helmeppo laughs like crazy. Then the old man tells him to pay attention. He says the old man doesn't have much time left to live, so Kobe should abandon him. All the cadets are shocked, and the assistant goes over to scold the old man. Then he asks why they even enlisted in the Marines. To save what? Then we flash back to the present where the guys were sweating bullets, because Pizarro was coming with that giant hand to smash the Marine ship like a mosquito. The ladies inside were even more desperate because they had no way to defend against something like that. The soldiers started firing at the big skeleton, but it didn't even tickle him. It was like shooting needles at a dragon's scale, and Tashigi says they needed to set sail immediately. She's just forgetting that they're not on the Straw Hats ship, because the only way to escape this smack would be using that galactic fart from the Sunny that sends them flying away. And Pizarro wasn't too keen on letting them escape either. Kobe just stood there thinking that if that gigantic hand hit the ship, hundreds of soldiers and civilians would turn into squished pudding. They were already preparing to jump into the sea. Kobe says it's all his fault. Just because he got caught in a lousy trap, all of this is happening. He was too far to do anything and had already imagined all the destruction that was about to unfold. But Garp says they can save them. He tells the gang that he's going to create an opening. First, Kobe has to destroy that sinister monster's hand, and the kid thought the old man was joking. Prince had to protect the ship from the debris of the giant hand, and Helmeppo couldn't let anyone get in the way of the two. Kobe says that if he does this, he'll be left behind. But decisions must be made in the blink of an eye, my friend. So Garp orders them to jump at once. Then all three obey and shoot into the air. Never in my life did I think I'd see Helmeppo make such a massive jump. The pirates start chasing the fugitives, saying that without Garp, they're nothing. They're all going to sink into the sea. Helmeppo was trembling, but he had to follow orders. So he charged at the scumbags, but there were too many for this Cyclops to handle alone. Gruss asks Kobe if he has any bombs to destroy the hand. Of course he didn't, but he'd figure something out. One of the scoundrels fires a bazooka at the kid, and at that rate, neither of them would even get close to the hand. So Helmeppo jumps to cut the bomb and says to leave the rest to them. He explodes along with the dynamite, and Kobe's heart heart nearly jumped out of his chest, but Zoro from Wish tells him to keep going, or Helmeppo's sacrifice will be in vain. Garp was leaking strawberry juice from his belly. It looked like he finally turned into a lady. Aokiji asks where he thinks he's going because he's totally beat. But the old man gives a big grin and says, "It's just a scratch." This guy doesn't go down even with a strong prayer, man. And even though he was just a shell of himself, he still had all that power. Garp shoots off into infinity and beyond, and the Ice King is already shielding himself to avoid becoming a statistic. That punch was so strong it felt like he was hurling a meteor to the ground. There wasn't even time to land because he already shot off again like Superman. He zigzagged and destroyed half the island in the blink of an eye. Pizarro was already sweating bullets, regretting messing with these guys. He asked why Garp was coming his way. Doesn't he care if the ship turns into goo? But the old man unleashes a galactic fission that smashes the big skeleton, making him fall hard to the ground. Now, let me ask you, with all this power, how did Garp lose to Luffy just with Gear 2nd back in Marineford? And some people still think he didn't let the kid beat him on purpose. After all that, the arm finally started to retreat, and there was the opening the old man was going to create. Now it's up to Kobe. He starts to remember Garp telling him that he was the future of the Marines, and now it was time to put all that training into practice. He says he won't disappoint the old man and shoots off into the air with those kicks like Sanji and CP0. The Vice Admiral managed to split the big skeleton's head in half, but that wasn't enough to stop him. And now Pizarro was angrier than ever. He was about to kill all his men right in front of him to teach him a lesson. And this time, Kobe wouldn't be able to save everyone again. Then Garp remembers a day when he was talking to Helmeppo, saying that Kobe was evolving fast, but in return he was always getting hurt. And the eggplant-haired guy says he asked him not to tell anyone, but the kid also started doing combat training on the ship every day. And we all know that everyone who beat the poor ship turned into a monster in the future. Kobe says he's not as good a fighter as the other soldiers, so he had to train 100 or even 200 times harder than them. Only then would he become a Marine soldier capable of protecting someone. In the process, he messed up his hands thousands of times, because you know he couldn't even use hockey to protect his fists. Then Garp found out he'd been training alone every night after his regular training, and after staining his fists with blood so many times, he was finally more than ready. He had to get there in time before it was too late, and he jumped like a shooting star, leaving the entire sky red. Hibari realized that it was Kobe, and no one understood a thing. It was impossible for him to stop that hand on his own. He looked like an ant next to it. They said people call him a hero, but the kid was pushing his luck. They yelled that it was too dangerous up there and told him to escape with them. But they're wrong if they think they can run away. Even if they manage to jump into the sea, Aokiji will turn everyone into popsicles. The Marine hero was about to become a pancake along with the ship. All those innocent people would lose their lives because of him, so he had to destroy it somehow. That's why he trained 200 times more than anyone else. The guy was like the Rock Lee. They decided to abandon the ship, but it was too late. So they started praying because that was all they could do, until Kobe focused all his hockey into his hand and prepared a monstrous, sinister, destructive, absurd, terrifying honesty impact that obliterated that giant hand from the inside out. The kid managed to destroy a giant punch bigger than the island at the last second. It was so powerful he exploded like 7 times. Everyone was in disbelief because no one saw that coming. Kobe was falling along with all the debris onto the ship, and Garp was laughing because he knew Kobe would pull it off. Prince asked when Kobe got so strong, but now it was his turn to protect the ship from the debris. He created a clay web that blocked most of the rocks, and apparently Helmeppo tanked that explosion and was still alive and kicking. He ran to grab Kobe, saying he couldn't believe he actually did it, and I don't think Kobe could believe the destruction he caused on his own either. Looks like it was worth wrecking his hand thousands of times. This is for all of you who keep saying Kobe's weak. Take that. Once you destroy an arm the size of a mountain, then you can talk about the kid, alright? The debris fell into the sea and they could finally go home. Every soldier without exception started celebrating, and Hibari ran to hug him because that was straight to marriage. He was happy she was okay. Everyone was overjoyed, and now they just needed to get Vice Admiral Garp back on the ship so they could get out of there. But not everything is sunshine and rainbows, my friend. Garp called, saying that the Rescue Captain Kobe mission was completed. Tashigi asked him to return to the ship, but the old man told them to get off the island. Kobe was in shock, and Helmeppo immediately asked if he had lost his mind, but he said he'd be fine, and their safety was the priority. The kid was on the verge of losing it and told Prince to turn back, and you can be sure that's what everyone wanted to do, but their victory today would be a threat to all pirates. Then Kobe remembered when he was just a kid begging to join the Marines. And do you remember the first question Garp asked? Why did they enlist in the Marines? The answer was to save the future of people, and he wasn't kidding when he said to leave the old man behind. They had to save the boy and run, and that's exactly what they did. Kobe was almost in tears, but they had to move on because they were the future of the Marines. And Garp hung up with a giant ice stake stuck in his chest. And even in a situation like that, the old man couldn't stop laughing, because to him, this was the best victory he could hope for. And Aokaji had to do this to his own mentor. After saying to save the boy and leave the old man behind, he got a beating from the assistant. But he cracked up, saying the future of the youth has no limits. Kuzan remembered everything the old man had done for him and turned him into an ice pop for good. And the next day, the news had already spread. Kobe, the young hero of the Marines, had survived. But Vice Admiral Garp, the legendary hero, disappeared entirely on the pirate island. They also reported that Emperor Luffy of the Straw Hats was causing absolute chaos in Egghead, the island of the future. Yo bro, had you already watched all the Egghead episodes, or was this your first time? I'm on my third rewatch because I just can't handle another week without an episode. Make sure to check out the video popping up on your screen, it's fire. Don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. This video was a ton of work to make. I'm out for now, thanks and peace.